I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth, and you're listening to the VonDubCast. If you don't want to listen to me gap in the intro and you want to skip right to the interview, skip about 8 minutes. Before you do, please consider doing one of these couple things that really helps out the show. Following the social medias for the VonDubCast, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you could do those things, that'd be awesome. Also, give me a subscription on the YouTube channel. That'd be great too. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 84 of the VonDubCast. This is another great episode. I know I say that every time, but I'm just so proud of these conversations that I just have to start it off with that. But this is one I did probably a month ago. Definitely a month ago at least, because it was before the 1 year anniversary. Was that weekend right before the 1 year anniversary of the podcast, and I did a bunch of great episodes. The Nick Walker side chick episode that released on Friday, that was one of them I did this weekend. This recording I did with Isla, and then I think on the Sunday that weekend I did that amazing conversation with Ken Rutherford on Father's Day, which was that Sunday. So it's been a few weeks since I recorded this, and it was just a really special conversation. Me and Isla were trying to sit down for probably, I don't know, 2-3 months, just kind of trying to find the times. We're both busy. She's a welder, among a million other things she does, as you'll hear when you get into this conversation. And I've been busy running around, so we just kind of were trying to find the right time to make it work. And I'm so glad that we did. This was one that we didn't really know each other at all going into it. We had a mutual friend that just said, like, oh my God, you guys need to get in the same room together and have a conversation. And she was so right. Just the spirituality, the ideas of the world. I think what was fun was I think me and Isla both see the world in a very similar way and have a very similar idea of how things work, but we have different language for it. And that's what I find more and more as I get into this podcast is so many of the ideas, like there's not all that many ideas out there in the world, but people stumble upon them themselves and name them something new and find a different way, and then they fight over them, which is kind of funny to see. But just to go into this conversation with, I attempted, I'm sure I didn't, but what I was trying to do with this conversation was to go into it with as open mind as possible. I've been very guilty of being very close-minded in the past to things that maybe aren't 100% factually, scientifically backed up. Anything that falls out of the realm of science and maybe into the realm of, I don't know, belief maybe is the right word. I really didn't have time for it. And over the last couple of years, I've really realized the folly of that and how much, not that to say that I'm all in on them now, but I at least don't dismiss them, and I try and find the nuggets of gold within them now. And I found I got a great deal of intuitions about these things and just education on them and how they work. And, you know, like I said, I'm sure from this conversation, I didn't take 100% of the things in and change my mind on all of them, but I just found it fascinating. Just to listen to somebody that has lived such a different life and has such a different mindset but at the same time is so similar in wanting to help people and wanting to better themselves and to want to use the tools around them and to, not take the tools that are given and the tools that are bandied about a lot and kind of to find your own tools that work. And I just had a great conversation. We got along so well. I could have done, 6 hours of this podcast of just learning more and more about the different rituals and the different plants and the different uses. And I'm also fascinated about the accumulation of this knowledge and where it comes from and the journey of learning and the stories of who it's helped and how it's helped. I really enjoyed it. We talked about Isla's, I don't know what the right word is, foray into the bodybuilding world, getting out of that, kind of what that gave and what that took away. Talked about welding and being in the oil and gas kind of culture. We, what else did we chat about? Potions, ceremonies, traditional tobacco use, traditional marijuana use. What else? A million things. We talked about so much, and it was just a brilliant conversation. And it's one that's going to be hard to describe. I'm already just thinking in my head, like, what am I going to write for the description for this episode? Because it's been 4 weeks and I don't remember enough of the specifics to make it sound half decent. Which I know, and I know I've said this on the podcast before, but it bears repeating. So much of what happens in these podcasts forgotten the minute I hit end recording or like stop the call or whatever it is at that point. So much of the specifics go right out of my mind. Like, what did we specifically talk about? Some things here and there will stick, but what you really remember is how the conversation felt in that hour to 2 hours after the recording, and the mood you're in, and where your mind goes after it. Like, what kind of state did that conversation put you in? Is your mind still racing? Are the ideas still like, is it adding more to you and you can't stop thinking about it for days? And this is one of those ones, right, where I don't remember specifically everything we talked about, but I remember how this podcast made me feel. And I remember the night I had after it, and the realizations, and the just the experience I had, like the whole night after this episode. Like, I learned so much from this conversation, but it didn't stop at this conversation. The whole night, once I left, I was up till like 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't know if I even slept that night, of just rethinking so many things. I don't know what it was about the conversation specifically that just gave my head that shake, that knocked some things loose. But man, did it ever. And I think that's the power of some of these podcasts, right? It's not about the 1 or 2 things that you might learn, which is also great, and I don't want to belittle that aspect of the podcast, but it's about how it makes you feel. And this one made me feel something, and I think that is just really special, and I'm really happy about it. So I hope you guys enjoy that as well. For all I know, it could have just been, me just selfishly, exploring all these interesting things that I had to offer, and maybe it's not for everybody, but I have a sneaking suspicion you guys are going to really enjoy this too. So what's all the things that I always say I'm going to write down and never do? Help me out by following the podcast, subscribing to it so that it downloads the episodes automatically when they come out, whether that's Apple Podcast, Spotify. They usually only download when you're on Wi-Fi, so it's not going to cost you nothing. And just, it's so helpful to the podcast to have those people that subscribe to it, and it just downloads every time. That is the lifeblood of what these things are. So if you could do that, that's great. If you see an episode, if you really enjoy this episode, pass it on to a friend that maybe some of the topics will line up with. Share the post on Instagram or Facebook. That really helps. Go to the YouTube page, give that a follow. That'd be awesome. Maybe like a video there. That goes a long way, and all those kind of things. And then I think I mentioned this on the last episode. I'm also looking to bring somebody on to maybe start paying to listen to these episodes ahead of time, and just kind of dictate a rough draft of kind of what the topics were, maybe timestamp them, so that when I go and do this, I don't have to, remember back to how the podcast made me feel. I can have that, as well as maybe some specifics more to go over, to give you guys a bit of a better heads up of what's going on in these intros, even though these intros are mostly supposed to be, and half the time end up being just a little therapy session for me to talk about what's going on in my life. And I'm already 8 minutes into this intro, and I don't want to let it go too much longer, but just a quick update, because I know, I think the last update I gave, I was, maybe not in the best place, and was just working through some stuff, and still am. Everybody's always going to be constantly in some sort of flux with that sort of stuff, but just had a great weekend here up in Edmonton. My best friend just bought a house, and got to spend some really good time with him, help him move in, and he just seems so happy right now, and his life's going great, and that just makes me so happy. And it's so nice to be able to see them and just have a weekend like this where you just kind of turn off. And I really was hoping to get some more podcasts in this weekend and kind of do that, but I think I really needed this reset. And as disappointed I was that I didn't get any podcasts recorded, just having that free time to let my hair down and enjoy, and go bowling and go to the casino, and like, oh my god, I just didn't realize how much I missed that. And not to fall off the light side of it, because I think it's great, but it's just got me thinking about how nice it'll be eventually not to have to do 8 hours of driving to have weekends like this, and maybe be a little bit close to friends and family. And it's got me really excited for that. Not not to frame that in a negative way. It's just something I'm excited for when the time is right. I've told you guys on this podcast a million times how trying to force things when the timing isn't right just puts you on the wrong path. And if you just let things move smoothly and just go with the flow, like, things will line up, and the right time will come, the right opportunities will open up, and it's going to be great when it does. So I can't wait. I'm really excited. Really excited for this podcast, for you guys to hear. Really want some feedback on this one, because I think it's just such a, the type of topics we talk about in this podcast is something that I've been really excited about talking about on this podcast, and been really struggling to find the right type of person like Isla to have this conversation. So I'm really excited. I'm curious to see, which types of people like this conversation, which type of people this is so not up their alley. I'm excited both ways, because I know this one might be a little bit polarizing because just some of the topics we talked about, but I'm so excited for it. So thank you guys, and I will see you on the outro. All right, bye. All right. Thanks for being here, Isla.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I've been excited for a long time. I was talking with a friend from Slave that knows you, and she just said it a couple times, like, you have to have my friend Isla on. She knows me a little bit, and she knows you, and I think she knew that we would have quite the conversation if we got in the same room together.
Yeah, she's been plugging you pretty hard. She's like, you guys have to have a conversation.
Yeah,
so here we are.
That's good. Well, like I was just telling you, I had a producer on yesterday. I was making music, and it was the same thing. I had a couple people say, like, you have to talk to this guy, and I find that those conversations where you have a couple people speak to the relationship or what kind of conversation they think is going to have, those ones turn out to be the best ones.
The best ones.
Yeah.
Oh, most like awesome. In depth, and like you don't. It just like takes so many different twists and turns as the conversation goes. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Me too.
I don't even know what we're talking about, but I'm here for it.
I never know what I'm talking about. Like I always tell people, I have this big list of questions, and usually it's just kind of a safety net in case there was a lull in conversation or we didn't need something. Then I know I have something to pull up and keep the conversation going. But I'd say probably 95% of the time, the conversation, once it starts, it takes on a life of its own. It goes, and every once in a while I'll be able to sneak one of the questions in naturally in the conversation because it fits. But for the most part, it's just kind of letting it go wherever it goes.
You bet.
It's lots of fun. So you wear a lot of hats.
I wear a few different hats.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of them is welding. One of them is, well, I think I'm struggling because I don't know even what the right terms to use are, right? Like, I'm curious about like the apothecary stuff. I'm curious about some of the other spirituality things that you. I feel like I'm just lacking so many of the terms to even try and dive into.
It's honestly, it's so far out there, and it's like its own little niche kind of thing to the side that like it's so hard to describe to people. They're like, "What's your business?" And I'm like, "I'm a natural healer. I'm a medicine woman. I'm a witch." And they're just like, "I'm sorry, what?"
Yeah. Well, I think that's the first thing that. Look, Tori said that to me of like, I don't know if it was those words exactly, but it was some sort of string of words like that gave me that reaction. But luckily, in the last year or so, probably a couple of years, but I've been trying to be more accepting of things I'm unsure about or that I don't understand as much, because I feel like for so long I was so cut and dry of, what works and what doesn't and what is proven and what is scientific. And I just lived my whole life through that lens and really didn't give a lot of time for things that have use.
Yeah.
And I saw the error in my ways on that. And I've tried to be more open to some of these things and bring it in. And it's tough because I have a lot of programming. I can feel it pop up. Every time somebody brings up one of those things, I have to almost fight back my initial instinct of that's silly, that's nonsense, just put it away and try and be open to it. And I have been over the last year. And I actually have a good friend from Vancouver, and she's been kind of my person that I'm safe enough to ask my questions in the poor English that I have. Probably
ask them though. Yeah. Honestly, ask them.
Yeah, because how do you learn if you don't? It's embarrassing because you don't want to insult somebody either by choosing the wrong words or talking about it in the wrong way. But if you can find that, that's how people learn about it, and that's how the information spreads. And that was one of the biggest things I wanted to talk to you about, because so much of that seems like it falls into the category of lost information. That there's a small subset of the population that is trying to either rekindle, refine, or carry forward, just to be a conduit to make sure that it doesn't get lost, that they had somebody in their life that they got to learn from, and they want to bring that forward onto other people. I'm curious for you, was that always were you always a spiritual person, or was there a time or an event or somebody in your life that kind of brought you down that path and then you ran with it? Or how did you even get started in all that?
That's a big question.
That is a big question. That's what we're here for. That's how you do it on a podcast.
Well, I'll start off by saying that I was born and raised Christian Lutheran, and attended church pretty much every Sundays, did the whole confirmation, first communion, did all that. But like the values didn't always kind of mesh with me. And like some of my earliest childhood memories, and it's funny because like I know now, and like knowing the things that I know and like about memories and time and just how everything kind of loops, that me thinking back on these memories of when I was thinking about these things, because I just remember laying in my backyard and I'd be like, man, like we're not supposed to be living like this on Earth. Like this is not how.
And what age do you think that is?
Well, my sister hadn't been born yet, so I was younger than 8.
Yeah.
So like I was super young having these thoughts in the backyard, just like, man, like it's like really existential.
Yeah.
Like I've been existential my whole entire life. And it's funny watching people go through like existential crises, and I'm just like, bro, that's my whole life.
Yeah. I remember when I had my first beer.
It's like it literally. And so like spirituality, like it didn't really hit until I moved out of home, until I was kind of removed from that like Christian household. And it's nothing against my, my upbringing and stuff. They did a great job, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I'm a great human being. They did the best that they could. But once I moved out of home, I was able to explore all of the different things that I wanted to. And of course, we have the internet now, and it's just like, holy shit, there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned, because you were like, well, I'm really scientific. I started looking, because like I'm also very scientific. Like I love science. I love knowing how things work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I dove into spirituality. And I made the comment to you on Instagram the other day, and I was just like, spirituality is science confirmed.
Yeah.
And like that's like really that's all it is. And it's like when you start looking at things like we're talking like frequencies and vibrations and things on an anatomical level, we learn about that stuff in high school. It's all stuff that most of us, the big majority of us, are knowledgeable about. We just are too fucking stupid, I guess, to put two and two together that like, hey, this is how the universe works.
Yeah.
Like we learned in school that, you have your five senses and this is how you receive the world, how you perceive everything. It's like, yeah, there's a table here, but like, it's actually a buildup of atoms vibrating at a certain frequency that the light's refracting into my brain's perceiving all this stuff. And it's like, okay, so spirituality isn't too far-fetched.
Right.
Like when I start thinking about things like, energy manipulation and even like manifestation and we can even go as far as to say like crystals, like it's all like there's the science is all there. It's just it takes a person with a little bit of logic to put two and two together, and it's like, oh fuck, like this is just how this is just how life works.
Yeah, and you find those people. I think what's been so much of a struggle for so long was people kind of took those into two boxes, right? There's science and there's spirituality, maybe.
Yeah,
right? And they tried to look at them and investigate those as two separate things and not allowing themselves to see where the crossover is. And I think a lot of times you got to see that where there was throughout history, you can see these amazing scientific minds that were extremely religious as well. And they were able to put that aside as much as they could to articulate the scientific method, right? And to bring things through. But what people don't understand is science at its base, not science at its base, but humans' interaction with science at its base is intuition based, right? Like these scientists, they do these studies and they set up these experiments, but it's to test an intuition. They think, I think that this is how this works and I'm going to test it.
Yeah.
Right. And that intuition is built off a lot of things and a lot of your upbringing. And sometimes your religious views and your what is really deep down at your own core inside of you is what's going to articulate or what's going to, manifest those intuitions of the world and how the world works.
Yeah.
Right. So those two things were never separated, right? They've always been crossing over. I think we just never wanted to admit that. And I think that's something that we see as of lately, a lot more people bringing that forward and showing where those two meet, like this, the spiritual and the scientific. And it's so funny to hear you tell that story of kind of your own spirituality and how it went, because it mirrors so much of my own. Very much grew up Christian and went to church only for a little bit at a young age. And I very much rebelled against it and didn't like the lack of being able to ask questions, didn't like some of the values that they were articulating. And then also it seemed like there was a big disconnect between the values that they were espousing and the lives that they were leading. And it was like, this doesn't seem to add up. And the same thing, even as a very young kid. Same thing.
And like, even to like, cause like I did all the Bible studies and stuff, and it's like, I'm a very, very logical person.
Yeah.
Read the Bible, take the Bible for what it is. And it's like, y'all, you're fucking missing the message here.
Yeah.
Like really, really, really badly.
Right.
Like, how are we teaching everything so differently? It's just like, we're going to read this passage and it so very clearly says this one thing. And then we're going to interpret it to be this other, like way off to the left field idea. It's like, okay, you lost me. But
and that's funny for myself. What kind of brought me back into spirituality was through that same lens of science, of kind of going through and listening to these amazing scientific thinkers, these, crazy big brain speakers talk about science and where science ends. And there's a million words, right? You can call it God, you can call it religion, you can call it, whatever it is, whatever that unknowable thing is, the mystery, right? Like I like to use words like mystery because then you can assign whatever word you want on top of that if you want. But there's certain areas where, what science is doing is trying to know as much as possible, as much as we can know about all these things. But there's certain level where we can't know, and it's ineffable, right? And I love that idea, and these really smart people, and being okay with that. And I feel like that is the step. I feel like there's a huge subset of the population that doesn't want to believe that things are unknowable. And then there's a huge subset of the population whose entire being is based on things being unknowable, which is the religious versus the non-religious, right?
Yeah.
And it's about finding the middle balance of those two things, of understanding that you don't need to just lean on the unknowing. You can still search for knowing as much as you can, but knowing going into it that there's going to be things we will never be able to know.
And like, I think spirituality just kind of like nuzzles into that little spot.
Exactly.
So well.
Exactly.
So well, because like, I'm so okay with like, there's so much beyond me, and like, not even like, just like in like other dimensions in the ether.
Yeah.
It's just like, there's so much out there that I don't understand. But I'm still going to try and nitpick away at it. I'm still going to go on my mushroom excursions. And I'm going to try and reach out and touch it and like experience it, like meditation. There's just so many things that we can do to like have that little window into the unknowing, right?
Right.
We don't know what the knowing is. We don't know. We get to see through the window, but that's it. And it's like such a cool little like cozy spot in between, like.
Yeah. And it's cool. You mentioned a couple things there that can get you to this place. There's times where you can dissolve a little bit of that. You can almost think of it as two worlds, right? Like existing in the ephemeral, that things that's the unknowing, the thing that's always been there. That, you know, you can think about it. People say, this is really cliche, and I hate this verbiage, but I almost think that there's better words for it. But your own personal truth, whatever that is, right?
100%.
Like, I hate saying that.
No, man.
It sounds yucky, but like
Cliche things in life, like
are cliche for a reason.
They're cliche for a reason, and there's so much more depth and like meaning to what they are than what we just constantly say on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So like, I heard you mention mushrooms and meditation. Those are two things that I think can take you out of this mundane life and slow things down and break down some barriers that allow you for short bits of time, and not completely, but just a taste. You get to dip toes in the water of that other side a little bit.
Yes.
And this is something that I had never really experienced, because I was very straight and narrow, very anti-drug until a couple of years ago. Like, I was just completely like, I drank like a fish, but I, had this whole thing in my head, drugs are for lazy people, bad decisions, all that, programming. And that changed. But what the biggest change with me was finding meditation. Yeah. And that was a cool experience where, with no other things, I was finding this it's almost like a new pocket of my brain that I'd never been in. I'd never slowed things down, because my mind always, since I was a little kid, I go at 1,000,000 miles a minute. I cannot stop. It never slows down. I could never sleep. I could never, and it was so cool to see what happens when you can. And it's a practice. You have to practice at it, and you have to get better at it. And since I started meditating, I think it was April of last year that I started the first time. I was at a really dark place. I've told the story on the podcast a lot of times. Just, I was mental health, COVID. I was probably the most depressed I'd ever been. And just out of desperation, I tried meditation, and it really helped. And then the next day I thought, I'm going to try it again. And somehow, in that quietness of just repeating this mantra over and over, sitting in my childhood bedroom at home, because I went home to visit my parents because I didn't know what else to do, because I was at such a dark point, this truth came out of, hey, idiot, you've wanted to start a podcast for fucking years, and you're lying to yourself, and you're just scared that you're going to fail, and you have to admit it to yourself. And it came out of that. And from that moment, that day, I ordered the equipment. I started, and I was like, no, like, this is what you're doing.
I love
right?
that.
I've been meditating straight ever since then. Right. Like, and I found so much of the best ideas I come up, like if there's a thing at work that we're working through that I really can't find, if I can sit and meditate, I find so many good answers come out of that. And it's just something about, and I'm not changing my mental state at all. I'm just calming things down and just listening to what's already there. And these ideas are popping up.
It's like you're like, people kind of ask me like, how do you meditate? And like, I don't know if you've ever been asked that question. Like,
a million times. I've tried to do it on a podcast, try to explain to people how I meditate. And
you want to be the observer.
Yeah.
That's like the easiest way I can put it. And like I talked about like the window looking in thing earlier. And it's like, you want to be looking into that window of yourself. Like, I am like, how do I explain? I'm me, but I'm not me. Does that make sense? Like, there's a bigger me up there that's listening to the little me down here.
Right.
And you want to be the big me.
And what connects those two things is the ego and the and all your programming and everything, right? Like, because you are who you are from the time you're born, right? That I don't know if you want to call it the big self or little self, the observer, whatever that is, that is there. And then there's all this programming that's put on, right? Like all this, that anti-drug program that I talked about, all that kind of stuff of this narrow view of what the world is, and that it ends here. There's no more mystery to it. This is what we know. This is science, right? Like all that program is on to there. And then also the ego, that can't be stated enough how much of a barrier that is between your true self and what comes out in the world and what you articulate. And that is such a powerful moment to understand that and start to see that in yourself and notice, okay, this is the true me. This is the true me distorted by my ego. And that can be fine if it serves you, but you need to recognize it so that you can check in with yourself. Okay, is my ego serving me right now or is it not?
Yes.
Do I need to back it off or is it doing it? Because you need a little bit of ego, right? Like if I didn't have ego
is the human condition.
It is.
But it's the most fucked thing about the human condition because we have literally, like, I want a handbook on this, please.
Yeah, no shit. Hey, a little bit of training wheels, maybe.
Something rules. Like, it's so hard to control, man.
Yeah, and imagine what the world would be if there was a handbook for the ego, right? Because what I've seen as of late and all the COVID stuff and all this stuff, and over and over again, you see these issues with huge power structures at scale and what happens. And it's this thing about you get so many people that all work together independently and all those egos start to go together, and these things can happen where in a small group you would never see the types of I'm trying to find the right way to articulate this, like the types of things you see in a big corporation, of the type of people being left behind, like just like putting people under the bus for the bottom dollar. You would never see that in a group of 50 people. If you had a tribe of 50, you would never see that.
Yeah.
It only happens because those egos are in check with everybody around you, and the social structures and the social things that we've established between each other as we grew up and these tribes got bigger and bigger, kept all those things in check and made sure that your ego was only serving you. And if it wasn't, you were going to hear about it. But then we evolved and got so much further out where there's not those checks and balances. And actually there's incentives in a corporate structure that if you want to climb the ladder and do well, you don't want to check your ego. You want to use that ego you want to weaponize that ego in whatever way it's going to make you climb the ladder. And that's when you see these manifestations of the bad thing. And what I tried to articulate on this podcast to people is that it's not bad people. It's bad systems, right? It's bad systems and incentive structures that are making these people bring out the worst sides of them.
Our system's so fucked, man. Like,
it is, right? Like
it is.
And that's what frustrates me, and that's why I was so unhappy at that point. Was I was seeing all this issues with the structures of the world and these things, and I wanted a voice to say it. And I would sit at home and listen to these podcasts and listen to these brave people talking about these things on their podcasts, and I was just thinking, like, man, I idolize them so much for being able to do that. And I would love to do that so much myself, but I always just had this thing in my head of you cannot start a podcast unless you're famous, right? Like you have to have some sort of people that want to listen to you, but it was such bullshit. That was just my ego protecting me from the fear of what it was to admit that this is something I want to chase. And every day I'm not chasing it. That's nobody's fault but my own. All those negative feelings I'm feeling by not chasing that's my fault. Mm-hmm. And the only person that can solve it is me. And the only way I can solve that is by actually giving a crack at it.
Doing it. Yeah. And that really speaks to me right now because like my best friend and I have been talking about for months about starting a podcast.
Yeah, do it.
And like
do it.
Yeah,
if you need any help, I'll help you.
Like fuck it, like let's just do it because like honestly, like her and I have really great, honest conversations about relationships, and not just like we don't talk necessarily about like our relationships to each other. It's just more about like the open conversation and of like this is what's normal, not necessarily like this isn't good, this isn't bad, whatever. Like what is normal, like what do people go through, like whether it be toxic or not, like what is normal and to go through in a relationship, and just have these conversations and bring on regular people with regular relationships and be like, hey, like how do you guys deal with things, you know, like what is your personal blah da 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 da, like
that I think that is first of all, do it. I think everybody should have a podcast. I think it's so special, and just what I get out of this is amazing, and I would suggest everybody do it. But then I really love what you said about looking at relationships, and not just specifically because I hear when people hear the word relationship, they jump to, you know, a sexual partner, right? Like that is 100%. That is where the mind goes for a good reason, right? That's kind of what we set it up to. But I feel like that is almost that's something you can change, and I feel like people are better off to change it, because the way I look at it is you have relationships with everything. You have relationships with your partner, you have relationships with your family, you have a relationship with your coworker, you have a relationship with alcohol, you have a relationship with drugs, you have a relationship with all these things, and you need to treat them all the same.
Yes.
And if you do, now when you work on your relationship with your partner, like your traditional relationship, you're now working on and building skills to work on relationships with everything. If you can think it through that framework, right?
Yes.
And that's why it's important. I feel like that's why everybody needs to, I feel like there'd be a lot of benefit just societally for people to change that viewpoint and start to think of relationships in a different lens. And I think once you do, life becomes more applicable because you're now learning one thing in one area and it's helping you in all these other domains, right? You're just changing the viewpoint a little bit and it helps you immensely in all these other areas, you know?
It's awesome that you said that, because like the girl that I was going to start the podcast with, so her and I have been best friends for way too many fucking years.
Since Jesus lost his sandals?
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's been a hot minute. And I didn't learn about my sexual partner relationship, like what I actually wanted in that relationship, until I thought about her and I's relationship.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy fuck. Like, what's the actual difference here? Like, this is somebody that I love no fucking matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I love this bitch no matter what. She going to do some whack ass shit in her life, but I love her.
You'll help bury the body.
I will bury the body. Let's go. Call me at 2 a.m. I'll be there. Like, and like, why wouldn't I ask the same kind of unconditional love and support from my partnership?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you expect that? Right?
Why wouldn't I expect anything less? And it's just like, why wouldn't I give anything less? So it's like, when I started looking at like you know, like the qualities of my best friendship, and it's like, it's a true best friendship.
Yeah.
It was like, man.
And did you find any answers in asking those questions?
All of my friendships, all of my relationships, everything relationship, the relationship with my home needs to be the same.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be the same, because it needs to be on the same level of just respect, support, and love. Like,
yeah. So when you recognize that in that relationship you have with your friend, and what that is and what that can be, and then try and take that into all these realms, of course, but just the main one of, because I think this is really powerful. I think there's going to be a lot of people that hear this and could benefit from this, of looking at their partner, right? And trying to ask those same things and asking those questions. Why do I think of it differently? Why would I accept something from my partner that I wouldn't accept from my best friend?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I think that is a very strong line of questioning. I think you can find a lot of answers by going down those routes. And another thing, just to back it up a little bit of what you're talking about, starting that podcast to talk about relationships and what is normal. And I found that when I jumped down the rabbit hole about 5 or 6 years ago of podcasting and listening to podcasts, one of the most interesting things was hearing these really successful people be really honest about their relationships and what is normal, and to see some of the most things I would never want to admit, and to see other people admit that and how they're struggling with them, and to feel how normalized that is. And then what I loved on top of that, or what I want to add on top of that, is then once you understand that, of all the things of what is normal, we can kind of then judge, are we okay with that normal? Like, this is what it should look like to be normal, but is that enough? Should we be asking more of our relationships, right? Like, because if you look at the traditional relationship of what it was for a lot of times, that has changed year over year. And probably people of our generation would expect a lot of different things than maybe our parents' generation would.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
But then where does that end? Right? Like, it's great how far it's come, but what other things are we asking, right? Like, one of the most amazing things I've listened to is a couple different people in podcasts that are very open, talk about open relationships and the struggles and the heartbreak and the things that go through it. And I've seen it go good and I've seen it go bad. Yeah. And I don't think it could be for me. I just don't think I have the mental fortitude to see what they go through in that. But it's so interesting to see. At least I love to know that there are people out there not satisfied with what normal is.
Yeah.
Right. And pushing the boundaries and trying to see, okay, well, what can normal be?
Well, I think the biggest thing too we need to remember is that like normal doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
Like normal, like honestly, like what is a normal person? What is a normal anything? Like,
I just know it's not me.
It's all perception based, right? It's for the viewer, like what the viewer perceives as normal, and we all go through our journeys. We're all individual, whatever else. We all go through the same shit.
Yeah.
And that's really like, that's kind of the main point. It's just like, we all go through the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you could be a fucking super famous CEO executive of a company in a relationship, going through the same stuff that this person that is living in poverty stricken homes in a relationship. Yeah. It's the exact same stuff. Yeah. It's like,
and I think that goes back to the human condition though, because I think there's something within us that really, really, really wants to feel that we are unique. And we are unique, right? Everybody is unique, but also at the same time, we're also way closer to each other. The human experience is so like you said, is so similar between it. And it might look different from the outside, but the closer you get to people and the more that facade of everything's built and that what we're trying to represent to people falls away. Right. And I think social media makes this much worse because it's the antithesis to this. You're not trying to pull these things away, pull off this armor to open up to somebody. Like I think what happens in a podcast like this, which over the time, we're going to become more open. We're going to drop some of those walls, but with social media, you're building it up more and you're trying to protect yourself more. And the most embarrassing parts of your life, you're keeping pushed to the back.
You push them to the back and then you like make up this whole like fake image of what my life actually is. I don't understand social media.
Yeah,
It's way beyond me.
And I was lucky for a long time. I just didn't. I had social media, and I'm just as guilty as everyone else. Like I'm just as addicted to the scroll, and I find myself, you know, I have to move my mind garbage folder on my phone of all the apps like around all the time. So I'm not just because I'll find myself just instinctually doing that. I'm not saying that I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I'm not trying to make myself sound better. But before I started this podcast, I was purely an observer. I was never posting anything. Like I had an Instagram page and I'd post videos. I played guitar and I play, you know, post a guitar video every like 6 months, you know, but like wasn't really ever for me. It was just kind of to keep it updated and I never really jumped into it. But now finding with the podcast, I need to be on social media and sharing stuff and keeping in people's minds because you can see that the amount of downloads are very much determinant on how
interactive and engaged it is.
Yeah. And just staying in people's minds, right? And putting stories up every day and that kind of thing. And you see it. But that difference of now from going from the sidelines of social media to in the fray, it is a very big difference. And I can feel it. Yeah. I can feel it in my mental health and I can feel it in a lot of things. And I feel like that is very eye-opening to me to see how many thousands and thousands of people. And that is, to me, I'm still very much on the side. Like I'm only doing it because I have to. And I'm just kind of scrolling things, finding things to post and that. But even just that step forward. And then you see these people that is a huge part of their life. That is a huge part of their identity, right? Like I don't, this is going to sound sexist to put it on. I see it more in females, the attachment to their Instagram page and more in young females than older ones. I have some close family friends and I was just listening into the conversation with the kids and they were talking about the amount of followers they have and they were going back and forth. And it broke my heart to listen to these 13, 14-year-old kids talking about like how many followers they had and not talking about, but the way you could hear the emotion in their voice, like no, I have more followers and just like how attached they were. It just broke my heart to hear it. Yeah. And it's like, man, like you hope that there's other values being propped up so that isn't the only path because it's fine to put value on. You can value whatever you want to value. Again, it's very similar to the ego. You just have to see, does it serve you? Right. And I think a lot of times it's so ubiquitous. The social media thing is so ubiquitous that you don't get to ask that question, is this serving me? Because it's kind of, you do it or you're the outcast, right? If you're going up right now and you don't have an Instagram page, that's a tough thing to navigate, right?
You're weird,
So now you don't really get that opportunity to ask yourself, does this serve me? Is this good for me? Because you have all these other pressures to kind of force you to make one decision over the other.
Yeah, and I think it's a really tough kind of journey to navigate on social media if you're going to satiate your ego. If I'm just here to validate myself, if I'm just here for the likes and to have people, you know, basically consume my content, or if I'm here to share my content with people. Yeah. And like, I kind of switched over my mentality on that. And like, so like I used to bodybuild. So I used to post a lot of like fitness kind of related stuff on my social media, a lot of booty pics and whatever else. And like, when I kind of switched over my mentality on like, this isn't like, yes, I'm sharing stuff still, but I'm sharing it for other people. Now, like, yes, I have people that follow me and whatever else, and people, like a lot of people see my stuff, but like, I don't care about that. The stuff that I share, and especially like in some of my wordy posts where it's like, I have things to say, or if I'm sharing like good memes or like good wholesome memes on my story, it's like, that's meant for one person. That is meant for one person and one person alone, and it's going to hit them in the heart and where they need it, or it's going to teach them a lesson or whatever the fuck it needs to do. And that is for them, and that's the end of the line. I'm not here for the likes. I'm not here to like, you know, rake in whatever else. Like
the social cachet or whatever it is that come with it.
Whatever. I don't care. I'm here to share an experience and hopefully get to somebody on the other side. Like I'm not here for gratification. Like yes, I do share a lot of cool things and like whatever else, but it's like, I really hope that my good stuff gets to where it needs to go. I really hope that it reaches that one person.
And I think the only thing that's going to determine whether it does or doesn't is the intentions whether you're putting it out. So if you're putting it out that way, I'm sure it will.
Yes.
Right? Like those are the things we talked about, no such thing as coincidences. I fully believe that too.
Yeah.
And I could tell you just specifically since I started this podcast and made that decision in that moment, how fucking weird it's been to have things fall into place and have a certain guest that I wanted to have on, but couldn't happen for a couple of weeks, and then something wild happens in their life where if we would have done that podcast a couple weeks earlier, we wouldn't have been able to talk to it, or just
like even you and I, like we talked about this how long, right?
Yeah.
How long? And it's just like, oh, sorry, man, like last month's been crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, same. It's like fucking perfect.
Yeah, perfect, because now we have all those other experiences, right, to come into and to find where you are in that moment is always going to be the right thing. It's not, and once you understand that, you start, or you can stop getting so hung up in caring so much about making sure everything's perfect, right? Like nothing ever is perfect.
I got a plan in my head. It's got to go according to plan. And it's like, oh man, like don't even worry about the plan because the universe got a plan. It's going to go exactly according to that plan.
Exactly.
Your plan means fuck all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Your plan means fuck all.
Yeah. I'm curious, since you brought up, that was one of the questions I had written down was I did, creep your Instagram page a little bit before we started just to get some fodder. And I was curious about that I have a couple curiosities of it. One is I'm wondering when you got into the bodybuilding stuff, was that also around the time you got into welding? Because I feel like I see a very big correlation between certain things like welding and electrical and bodybuilding.
I actually got out of bodybuilding just as I was getting into welding.
Okay. So I missed the mark on that one.
Yeah, and like I kind of took that whole section out of my life off my social media. I did a whole like sweep through and big purge and got rid of stuff that kind of like no longer pertained to my life, exes and whatever else.
Right.
It's just it doesn't need to be there. Yeah. But yeah, so like I used to train like a couple of hours, a couple times a day.
Oh.
And then I went to work to 10 to 12-hour days, and that's I couldn't work my 12-hour days and then go to the gym for another 2-3 hours. Yeah. It was just too much. Uh-huh. And
did your body just start to tell you like, hey, you need to stop?
You need to stop. Yeah. Like you are fucking physically exhausted. You can't eat enough to keep the size on. Like just stop. Just settle down.
You need to make a change.
Yeah. And
what do you think drew you initially to the bodybuilding? Like I guess the first question would be, have you thought about it enough to even maybe answer that question?
Oh, 100%. Yeah? It was the guy that I was dating at the time. And he was heavy into the gym. And he was like, well, if you want to see me and hang out with me, because like we were kind of having a little bit of quarrel. And I was like, I never see you. He's like, you're always at the gym. Well, if you want to see me, come to the gym.
Right.
So I started going to the gym. And it's not like I don't come from an athletic background. I used to synchronize swim at actually a junior national level. So I have a decent amount of like athletic ability. Yeah. But got into the gym. I didn't really like it. I was kind of just there hanging out, and then started to see some progress. And it was like things started to change. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I get a little more comfortable in the gym.
Yeah.
Oh, you can compete?
That tied into something.
You can compete?
Yeah.
I have something to work towards now? Yeah. Let's go. So, and that's kind of what tied me into it. And then ego took over.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough.
Yeah.
So you needed to be bigger, better, faster, stronger. Started cycling and shut all that down when we started welding.
Yeah.
With the long days and stuff. And
wow.
I deflated like a fucking balloon. It was hilarious.
I can imagine.
I weighed like 150 pounds at my peak and I'm 110, 115 now.
Wow. Hey.
So
do you miss any aspects of it?
I miss my butt.
That is very fair. Very fair. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
I miss the strength, honestly. Yeah. Like out of all the things that I really, really do miss, and especially with welding being my career and lifting all the heavy things that I lift, it's like, oh man, like a little bit more strength would be fucking stellar.
A little bit of balance between that, that overkill of maybe what you're putting your body through to where you're
at. Yeah. And like, honestly, I didn't really find a balance after that. I kind of stopped going to the gym and I haven't touched weights since 2017.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to the gym. I haven't worked out. I don't even fucking go for walks, man. Yeah. I am the most fit, lazy person out there. Like,
oh, that's funny.
I look fit. I've got a fucking 6-pack, but don't ask me to run nowhere.
Fair enough. I'm the complete opposite. I'm the most in shape, out of shape person ever. Like, I don't look like I'm in any sort of shape. It's like, I run like every day, like 10 kilometers, but I don't look like it. And I run so that I can eat more because I know I have zero self-control on that, right? And like,
oh yeah.
But it's funny to have that other opposite side of it too, of just it proves a good lesson of what you see is not what you get, right? Like judging a book by its cover, going back to the cliches that are cliche for a reason, right?
Yeah, and like I really like to be the don't judge a book by its cover because it's funny. I'm a welder. I look the way I look.
Yeah.
I'm a small, petite, 25-year-old female. Now, when I hop out of the truck, people are like, "Oh, fucking here we go."
Yeah. Well, this bead is not going to be straight. Oh,
no,
boy.
like
They're already making prejudgments.
She'll be done by the end of the day. Yeah. And
do you take pleasure in not? I'm trying to find a nice way to put this. I want to say shoving it down their throats, but like in a nicer way of just proving them wrong.
It's not necessarily proving them wrong because like I know that is
for sure. Yeah.
In the initial, I got hired as a joke. Yeah. I got hired as a joke. My very first job in the oil field, I got hired as a joke at the shop. It was like, oh, we're gonna hire this pretty girl and we're gonna kick her on the floor for the guys to look at. Fuck you! Yeah. I made it.
Yeah.
Like
that's awesome.
I've never really been like I don't like take pleasure in like proving anybody wrong, but like I definitely know that they already have that mentality when they see me. They're like, oh, like we don't have high hopes here. I like to exceed expectations.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Maybe it was the way I should have framed it.
I really like to, have that gratification moment at the end of a job when somebody's just like, wow, you really surprised me, or you're a good worker, or like you did a good job, or whatever, whatever the case may be.
Which is half insulting.
Right? It's just like, thanks for acknowledging that you've seen that I work hard because I know you thought I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's nice. And one of the things that comes up on this podcast almost every episode is the importance of why and why you're doing things, and asking yourself that question. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you living the life that you're living? And how important that is to the outcomes and to the manifestations of happiness in your life. And what it sounds like from that journey of the gym, it sounds like the why of what you got into it wasn't true to who you were, to your inner truth of what you want to do. It wasn't your passions driving you into it. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy the aspects of it, but eventually, that there's going to be burnout there because it's not an absolute match, right? There's wires that are hitting. There's some feedback there, right?
100%. And
I feel like that is so important in finding things. And then something like welding. What got you into welding? What do you think the why is there?
So that the origin stories of the welder is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm born and raised in Grand Prairie, oil and gas, right?
Yeah.
I was completely naive to it. So my dad works at the International Paper. So he kind of worked at the mill my whole life. I didn't really have any experience with oil and gas industry. Didn't have any family that worked, didn't have any friends, whatever. So I actually took a little labor job doing like a spark watch position at International Paper back in 2015 or 2016. And I had never seen welding before. And I got to work with these welders and they arced up and I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what? You're doing what with what? Electricity? I'm sorry, let me try this. This is the coolest shit I have ever seen.
Did they let you try it?
They let me try it, ran a bead, and I was like, this is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
This is the coolest thing. And I still to this day think that it is the coolest thing.
Yeah, it is.
It is. And it's like you're playing with electricity at the tip of your fingers and you're gluing things. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
So I told the guys on that crew, on that job, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pursue a career in this. And they were like, oh yeah, whatever. Ha, ha, ha.
And it sounds like it tapped into the artistic nature that was very integral to who you are. It seems.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. But.
I'm not really a girly girl. Like I like getting my hands dirty. I like building things.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize that was an option that I could take.
Yeah.
And
you just never seen that path.
I just never really seen the path. And it was like looking back on it now, I was like, fuck, I wish I would have done welding in high school. But
yeah, but like we said earlier, if you would have found it in high school, there would have been whatever pressures of who you are and who you could be at that time that maybe wouldn't have made you enjoy it like you enjoyed it. Maybe it would have salted it for the rest of your life, and you wouldn't have been able to do it, right? And maybe the timing of finding it in 2016 at the time with who you are at that moment was what you needed.
I think it was 100% what I needed. And it, like, honestly, like my mom kind of makes the comment to me. She's like, your life is so weird. She's like, things just work out all the time for you. And I'm like, I just trust, man. Yeah. I just trust that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out. Yeah. And it's like, I don't really have a plan.
Yeah.
Like I have like, bits and pieces of what I want to do in my life, but it's just kind of like, I just kind of roll with the punches and where I end up is where I end up. Yeah. And if I would have done welding in high school, I would have not done any of the herb work that I do today, I wouldn't have found witchcraft.
Right.
I wouldn't have found spirituality, honestly. And
Yeah.
like that in itself, because that's a whole other passion for me. That's a whole other passion, whole other side of me. And yeah, everything works out.
Yeah. And I'm definitely going to ask you about that, because that's what kind of the line of question is where I was going with that, was kind of the why behind the bodybuilding, the why behind the welding. And I wanted to get to the why behind that, but behind all the spirituality and the apothecary and all that stuff. But before we get rocks, exactly.
I'm not even shitting you, rocks.
Yeah, I have so many questions, and we're going to get there. But first, I kind of want to back it up a little bit because of something you just said about, things working out for you. And earlier in the podcast, you'd mentioned manifestation. That is something that I feel a lot, and I never admitted it. And this was something that I always felt, just how weird my life was.
Yeah.
About things, not everything, right? But things that I really cared about just seemed to oddly work out. And I was so blessed and had amazing parents and all these things. Like, I love reading, and the fact that I had parents that, put flashcards on my wall when I'm like 2 years old and put sentences together every night, so that I was an amazing reader. By the time I was like 5 or 6, I was reading like novels, right? And I love reading. I was so into that stuff, right? Once I got to high school and junior high, I had to hide all that shit because it was not cool to be, reading Harry Potter and Twilight and shit. But I learned that too at that time, and I got to see all these different sides, and I got to be all these different things. Anyway, going back to the manifestation, I never really admitted that to anybody. And I'd never really heard anybody that I respect talk about things like that, because that almost fell into that box of things that I just kicked everything out, right? That's into the woo-woo box. So I'm just going to kick it aside.
The woo-woo box.
Right? Like, I don't have to look at it. And that's how I operated my life. I'm telling you, until a couple years ago, that's how I operated everything. If it was in that woo-woo box, I just put it away. Because growing up in Slave Lake, Alberta, very much, oil and gas and very practical, what's going to make you money, you have to work hard, you have to grind, you have to do these things.
Christian conservative country,
you don't have time for anything woo-woo, right? So I kind of put it in that box. But then I was listening to a podcast. It was a Joe Rogan episode, and he had my other favorite podcaster, probably surpassed Joe at this point, Lex Friedman. And he's an amazing intellect. He's an artificial intelligence researcher at MIT. He's a philosopher. He's all these things. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's just the most amazing guy.
A well-rounded dude.
Yeah. And he's on this podcast. He's talking to Joe, and Joe asked him something, and I might be butchering this, but the gist of it will be correct. He asked Lex, he said, would you have imagined you're doing all the things you're doing, like, and coming on my podcast and stuff? And he said, yeah, like, because, if I put my mind to something, for some reason, it always works out, and I make it happen. Right. And I was like, holy fuck, it's someone that smart. Like, I've never heard somebody admit that out loud, because I don't want, like that's how I feel, but I would never want to admit that to people. You can say that out loud. Yeah. And then he talked about it more, and he was talking about, I fully believe that I'll have Vladimir Putin on my, he's a Russian too. And he's saying and I know that's a lofty goal, but if I put myself towards it, it's never failed. I've always accomplished everything I want to. And I was thinking, like, anything I put my mind towards, and that was the seed of starting the podcast, right? And that I didn't want to admit to myself, but like, I could do that, because everything else I've applied to myself like that has worked out that way. And if you can jump onto it. And I'm just curious for yourself, what your relationship with manifestation is, how intricately you've thought of it, and how much do you believe in it, maybe?
I fully fucking believe in it.
Yeah, wholeheartedly.
Especially after this last year that I've had, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Especially the last few months. I manifested a fucking RV, dude.
Nice. Fucking, you might manifest me one too, or what?
Man, that was like... But yeah, it's like, I 100% believe in manifestation, and like, I don't really know the technicals on it.
Yeah, me neither. And it could be so simple as just, you know what, if you work really hard, you can accomplish it,
I honestly believe it's like, I just need to keep envisioning this thing, and eventually that'll just become the reality. Yeah. And like you said, like, so many things in your life, like me, like so many things in my life have just like worked out the way that they were supposed to work out. Like, I was done work at one place, getting a call for work at the next place before the end of the day. Like, it's, things just work out. Yeah. And so, not too sure on the science of manifestation. I'm just going to keep visualizing, and that's how I think it works. Yeah. But
and for myself, again, a very scientific person that wants to find the underlying of this. I don't need to know why, because it seems to work. And if it seems to work, you don't really need to know why at the end of the day, right? Society got really, really far, not really know. We still don't really know fuck all, right? We're so ignorant. We don't want to admit it. We have this complex of trying to think we have everything figured out, but we don't. But yeah, I just think of it. It could be so simple as just, if you work really hard at something and keep it in the forefront of your mind, obviously that's going to bring you closer to it, and it's going to bring you closer to opportunities that might take you a big step closer, right? But if you didn't put that effort in, like,
And I think that's the key. You have to put the effort in. Like that is the key. Like you can visualize and focus and meditate on things as much as you fucking want.
Right.
But if you're not putting in the effort, if you're not actually doing the work to get the shit that you want to, like,
exactly,
it's never going to happen.
Exactly. So the way I look at it is almost the word manifestation and the word momentum. I almost use them interchangeably because like everyone thinks of momentum, and momentum is important. You have to keep moving forward in life to get to those places. But I almost think of momentum through a lens of manifestation of you have to keep that momentum going on those paths and open yourself up to those doors. And, you know, if a door opens, but you're 3 kilometers back, it could be shut by the time you get up there. You need to always be moving forward so that when those doors open or those windows, whatever it is, maybe you got to kick down a drywall wall, whatever it is, right? Whatever that turns into in front of you. If you're not there to make it happen, you're not, somebody else is going to take that opportunity, right? You need to be moving yourself forward. And it's a feedback loop. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
100%.
Day, right?
Yeah. And like, I think the catch-22 too is like, you have to be open to receiving from the universe. Like you can be at that end of that trail and done all the things that put on the effort in. And it's just like, if you're closed off to actually accepting that opportunity or doing the thing, you're just going to be at that dead end for forever. And I think also it's definitely that, and you have to be open to receiving, but I think also you need to be open to, what's the right way to say it? Like open to the randomness of the universe too, because sometimes those opportunities aren't going to look like an opportunity. Yes, I was going to say that.
Like I might have a vision for what I want this podcast to be and what I want it to look like, and I visualize that and I think about it and I daydream about it all the time. I do. I think about it all the time, right? Like I'm visualizing, but there could be an opportunity that comes up that is so far from a podcast and has but you almost need, this is going to get really woo-woo, but it's almost as honest with yourself as you can be and asking yourself the hard questions, sitting and meditating and getting in touch with that true self, with all the ego and all the other things and all the programming detached. Who are you? The closer in touch with that you can get, the more you can trust your gut.
Yes.
And the more you can trust your gut, the more you can follow these opportunities that might not even look like opportunities that are going to get you to that next spot.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like that is what's so important. And that's what's so hard to explain to people, because I feel it very deeply. And I feel like I understand it very deeply, just naturally for some reason.
Yeah.
But I have a tough time articulating that to other people of, you know, like I want other people, I want everyone around me to do this too, right? Like I'm always very much the Joe Rogan. I want, you know, to lift everybody up with me. I want everyone to do good, but I just don't know the words to try and help people. Like if somebody did want to follow the things that I'm doing, I wouldn't even know how to articulate it to them. Of like, you kind of just got to feel it, right? You got to get in touch with yourself. You got to ask.
Yeah. And then like getting in touch with your intuition, like the gut feeling that you're talking about, that's just your intuition. And like I had to explain intuition and like gut feeling to my friend the other day. And it was just like, that gut feeling, like you can think about a situation and think about when you had a gut feeling.
Yeah.
Now that gut feeling will change over time.
Yeah.
But the intuition, that initial gut feeling, that second that the situation unfurled, that's your intuition.
Right.
That is like the higher you giving you the answers and like tapping into that initial gut reaction is like, I kind of think that's like the answer to like everything.
Yeah.
Because like if you listen to your intuition all the time, like your higher self, you're constantly guiding yourself through life and you're constantly giving yourself the answers and like you have to look for them. It might not be the ways that you expect to see them, right? But like you have to look for it. And yeah, I don't know, like it's just such a weird.
Yeah, it's a weird topic, hey? Like it's
like I'm just trying to like focus. Like
I know it's hard.
Formulate
it's hard,
a sentence.
Hey? Yeah.
There's just so much information in my brain right now. It's just
yeah. I feel the exact same way.
It's like intuition. Just fucking trust yourself.
Yeah,
just trust yourself,
right? Feel that gut. But just like everything else, it's a skill, and you have to practice it. And you have to get good, and you need to recognize. I feel like some people are just so out of touch with themselves that they don't even know. They don't know what's intuition. They don't know what's the food they eat. They don't know what's the lack of exercise. They don't know what all these things are because they're so out of touch, right? Like when you look at how we evolved.
I'll put it this way. We live in a society that is made and built around keeping us separate, down to the rubber on the soles of our shoes keeps us separate from Mother Earth. That's why we're out of touch. Yeah,
for sure. And that's kind of exactly the point I was going to make. And when you look back evolutionarily of how we evolved, we were using our bodies to survive for a huge huge part of our development. It's only the last couple hundred years that we've been, safe enough. And still to this day, there's areas of the world where they're not, right? And you ask those people, right? You go to the Congo and ask the pygmies these questions and talk about this. They're going to be so much more in touch with their bodies because they're using them and they're doing it every day, right? And now you add all those things in, right? Shoes, clothing, all these things, societal norms, right? They're all, whether by design or not. I mean, we can put our conspiracy hats on it and go down that rabbit hole of the reasoning behind it. But all that be damned of just what it is and what world we're living in. We're so out of touch.
We're so out of touch. And it's like, because we're so out of touch with ourselves, we don't focus on like what we're putting into our bodies, what we're putting on our bodies, like what our thought process is. Like we're losing the touchness of ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, does that make any sense?
No, it does. It does. I know exactly what you're saying.
And like, I kind of like spun my views on that a few years ago. It was like, fuck, like, yeah, I know myself, but like, do I actually know myself?
Yeah.
Like, know myself on a physical level, as far as like literally everything, like how my body likes to exercise, how my body likes to eat, how my body likes to relax, like if how my body likes to like socialize in a situation. Am I more recluse? Am I more out? Like, how my brain is just so many different things that I focused on. It was like, holy shit, like I can create such a better relationship with myself by just tuning in on like these weird things, like things that we just don't think about on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Like, how often does a person check in with themselves?
And I feel like I think there's a couple reasons why. Right. And this is just me guessing. I don't know. I could be wrong. I think one of the reasons why is asking yourself those questions, and doing that is one of the scariest things you can do, because a lot of times you don't want to know the answer. I oftentimes think everybody knows the answers and deep down they do know this, but
it's just shit you don't want to admit to yourself.
You've compartmentalized it away because it's uncomfortable, and you don't want to go opening those boxes because it's painful. And we have done such a poor job of society of showing the benefit of going into yourself and opening those boxes and finding them out, right? Because we're so far removed and out of touch with our bodies that all the negative effects that come through, we don't even associate that with the fact that we're out of our bodies, right? Like, seriously, we
can't even, it's like, buddy's like, oh, I have a headache. It's like, well, like, have you drank water? Have you done this? Have you done that? Like,
you have no idea what that is, right? And like, if you've never eaten healthy, if you've never worked out, if you've never gotten to that place, now all the negative consequences of those lacks of those things, which all come back to this being out of touch with your body, are all. We also live in a society where we want to take the blame off and we want to externalize blame. So we find all these other things to blame it on instead of bringing it back to yourself and taking the locus of control inside, right? And I feel like because there's so many layers of detachment there that somebody could walk through their life and just complain about how they feel and their energy levels and all these things without even realizing that is 100% self-caused and 100% attributable to things that are within their control.
You're the writer of your own book, man.
Exactly.
You're the writer of your own book. You're the fucking star of your own show at the end of the day, right? Like, you can blame as many people as you want, as many other different things. Like, oh, it's it's my living conditions. It's this, it's that, it's whatever. Change it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you aren't feeling well, eat better foods.
Exactly.
Drink more water. Right?
They're simple. It sounds
shit.
Simple.
Like, my body's missing these specific nutrients. Okay, find the supplement that you need to take in order for your, like, it's such a frustrating topic for me to talk about because people are just so, it's just like, just get into tune with your bodies, you guys. Like, just tune in with your body. Your body tells you everything.
Right.
Everything all the time, all day, every day. Everything you need to know about yourself, your body will tell you. You just need to listen. Yeah. Just need to listen.
And what makes it so tough to listen is, to listen, you need quiet. And quiet, I think people think, obviously they think of quiet, just like when you hear relationship, they think of, a sexual partner, and just like quiet, they think of noise. But quiet can be distraction. Quiet can be time alone. Quiet, like when I talk about quiet, it doesn't mean like actually find a quiet room. It means calm your mind, right? If you fill every lagging moment in your life by hopping on Instagram and scrolling, you have no quiet time. You have no time with yourself. You have no time for that observer to come out and to see and to talk with that person, to talk with yourself and ask yourself, check in with yourself on these questions, because now you filled up your entire life. And I'm very guilty of this myself, because when I graduated, I found podcasts. I love podcasts, but I would never stop. When I got in my truck, I would podcast. When I do all this stuff, I would podcast. From the time I woke up, if I wasn't working or talking to someone, I had a podcast in me, and I was learning. I was taking in information.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ever taking time to digest that information. And there's a word that I'm lacking here that would be perfect in this instance, but like digesting it and like bringing it in, almost like taking it into yourself, that information,
Processing it.
Yeah. That's the word, digesting. Oh, there's this one specific word that all my woo podcasts listen to use for it. But anyways, it'll come to me. But yeah, I just think that's a big part of it. I kind of forgot everywhere I was going. I do this probably 3 times a podcast where I just completely forget the train of thought that I was going on. But maybe I'll just try.
I've been really proud of myself. I've kept my train of thought.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Like, I'm really bad for it because
Yeah.
like I got ADHD, man. So it's just like sometimes it's like,
Same here.
What was I talking
Yeah,
about?
same here. I do it all the time. I've done like 80 episodes now, and I'm still doing the exact same thing that was the
it's
start.
like,
I don't think
wait,
it's
hold
ever
on.
going
What
away.
was I saying? Yeah.
I hope it's endearing. That's all I can hope for. But I was curious to bring it back into the rocks, the crystals,
The rocks.
the apothecary stuff. Where would be a good place to start? Because I am so. This is where it goes so far out of my comfort zone and my understanding zone that I am going to be completely at your mercy.
Oh man, and like
Like,
it's such a big can of worms to
For
open
sure
up
it
in
is.
such a small like time period because like it all interconnects.
Yeah.
Everything interconnects.
Well, maybe
and,
I can ask you where was your entry point?
rocks.
Rocks. Okay.
Honestly,
Let's start there.
crystals were my entry point.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of like I had collected cool rocks growing up and
Yeah.
whatever else,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
pretty standard.
I don't even remember how I had learned about it, but it was like, oh, crystals have properties. How did okay, so I'm gonna start doing a little bit of research here and start learning about these crystal properties. And it's like, okay, so this is how crystals are, how they're actually healing. So like the different mineral compositions of the crystals, and like if you look at like, let's say like the quartz group. So if you look at a crystal like clear quartz it's the same components, the same chemical makeup as citrine, as amethyst, as rose quartz, as smoky quartz. The only difference is the time as which it's under pressure. So how long it's under pressure and for
Gotcha.
the amount of time. It's
Okay.
same principles making a diamond, right? Now, because of all those things, now every single element has its own vibrational frequency. I have a frequency. This fucking can has a frequency. Everything has a frequency. So we put these 2 special frequencies together to create quartz. These were, I guess, ingredients. It would create its individual frequency. Now, crystals are special because they run on their own special level of frequency. They're all color coordinated, and it runs with your chakra system. And like understanding that humans themselves are energetic beings on an energetic planet. And it's like when I say like rocks were my gateway point, like it was because it was like fuck, like rocks have energy, plants have energy, I have energy, my house has energy. Like literally
The universe has
the
energy.
universe.
And the universe has
everything-
vibration.
Everything surrounding me is charged.
Have you ever heard of the Hopf vibration? Oh, it's HOPF. It's a tough one to say. The Hopf vibration.
No.
You have to look it up. It's way beyond my ability to say. But if you're into vibrations, there's some visualizations I do of it that will blow your mind. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Maybe smoke a bat and then go look at it.
Sick. Okay.
Yeah, that's the best one. That's a good way to go. So you get into rocks and
Then I I get into rocks. I start getting into like energetics and understanding how the universe works on an energetic level.
And are you just figuring this out on your own? Do you have anybody around you that's kind of showing you
No,
the
dude,
ropes?
my spiritual path, my witchcraft path has been completely solo led.
Wow.
I haven't really had anybody to
You're
ask
Ronin.
questions. I'm like lone wolf in it.
Mhm.
I have no idea what I'm doing. And it wasn't until like I got TikTok here in the last year.
Yeah.
And there's like a whole side to TikTok that's like witch talk.
Oh, yeah.
And like there's a whole bunch of stuff
Are you
on
huge
there.
on Witch Talk?
I'm on Witch Talk.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on Witch Talk.
Oh, yeah.
And like I'm watching these videos
Yeah.
and like these people are talking about this stuff that they do and whatever else. And I'm like, shit, man, this is just stuff that I've been doing like
Not just
normally.
Yeah.
Just like this is just been my intuition taking the lead, and I've just been doing these things. And like I can look back and like my family and my mom and like the witchcraft goes deep. And, like even though my mom is a Christian,
Yeah.
homegirl plants apple trees every single house we go to, and you plant an apple tree for prosperity. You know, she's burned simmer pots on the stove full of spices and oranges, and that's to cleanse your home, and it gives special. It's just, there's things that my whole entire family has done my whole entire life that I'm like, we're a bunch of fucking pagans.
It's so funny. And that's something, I feel like that was the first entry point for me. I feel like rocks, it's funny that that's your first entry point, because I feel like that was always the one where that was probably the hardest one I had personally to give the time of day.
I think it's the hardest one for a lot of people.
For a lot of people,
because they're
right?
just like, oh, that's just a fucking rock. And I'm like, and you're just a fucking human.
Yeah. And I feel like the way that I was first able to give it the time of day, which this might be completely wrong, the wrong way to think about it, and there might be way more to it, but the way I looked at it was, okay, so there's science is amazing and the scientific method, but we've only had that for a couple hundred years, right? In the current form. For a long time, we were doing the best we could and figuring things out, but we still had the same brains. We still had the same intellectual power. We just weren't working with the what we had to build upon, the knowledge base that we had to build upon, which we're all in cheat mode now because we have the internet, right? Now you have every piece of knowledge at your base, every human. If you win or lose or fail or have a good life or a bad life, it's completely on you because you have access to every piece of information out there.
Literally.
But at a certain point, we didn't. Yep. And we were just figuring things out. But there was really smart people back then, and they figured these things out and attributed things that helped them, because it doesn't matter why it works, especially back then, right? The further back in history you go, the less it matters why.
Yeah.
Because the only reason all these things matter why these days is because we're comfortable enough that we can even ask those questions, right? A couple hundred years ago, you couldn't ask why this rock made you feel this certain way because you're getting chased by fucking leopards, right? Like, you have no time for this, right?
Yeah.
Now we can ask these questions why, but at that time, it just mattered. Does it work?
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes. Let's go with it. Yeah.
And back then, they would just, find things by trial and error or whatever ways, whatever traditional knowledge they had to find these things.
Yeah.
And whether those things working, right? I don't want to be insulting to it because this is just the first way, and I've given it more credit than this after, but this is just kind of my super scientific way to give it a beachhead for people to give it the time of day to then look into it further.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I find it kind of funny because we call it like alternative health or alternative healing or whatever. And it's like, there's nothing fucking alternative about it. We've been doing this for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
The alternative is what we've come up with in the last 100.
Right. And to me, it's like, so now say they have 1,500 different rocks or things that have certain frequencies that do certain things, right? It doesn't matter what percentage of those are actually scientifically valid and which percentage of those are maybe just things that they work because they work. Because I think one of the biggest game changers for me was actually looking into studies and seeing how everybody knows about the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, right? Yep. But I don't think people realize how powerful they are. And when you look at the studies of and I think it just speaks to the power of our brains and what we can do. Like,
ridiculous.
We can do amazing things, right? But we don't really know how to tap into those. But they were tapping into that back then, right? If you say this rock does this one thing, it doesn't matter. It very well could have real reasons behind that, but it doesn't matter if it does or if it doesn't. And then when you apply that across, 2,000, there might be some real ones that have some real scientific reasoning behind the things that they're feeling. And there might be some that less, or it might be a percentage thing where this one, they all have effects, but this one's maybe only having a 1% effect, but this one actually has like a 30% effect, right? I'm just throwing numbers out to try and set the base. But to me, none of that matters, because as long as you have a tribute and you believe in it and it works, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And that was my entry to give it the time of day of like, okay, then even if none of those rocks work, there's no vibration, there's nothing, right? I'm not saying that, but even if it was, it wouldn't matter because it works. And if it works for those people, you can give it that. Having said that, I would have a hard time believing that of all that stuff and all the things I figured it out and all that none of those have some sort of scientific backing. Just statistically, that's almost impossible, right? So then if you look at it from that way, well, some of them have to have some sort of reason. There must be something going on. There must be more to it on some of them, right? Yeah. I'm not going to say every single rock is exactly what every single
like the chunk of sandstone that you find at the beach is definitely going to have a different frequency than the chunk of, white quartz you find at the beach.
Right.
That's just... Like, that's science. That's just science. Like, I can't argue that. Nobody can really argue. It's just like you put it on a scale, you monitor it. That's what it is. Like,
right. And to say that they like that's the thing. We can scientifically prove that they have different frequencies. What we haven't, or correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've had real solid proof of how frequencies affect. I think we see that frequencies affect a lot more, and that frequencies pop up way more than we have, but we haven't really nailed down exactly how it works.
Yeah. And like, that's kind of
But
like,
does that matter?
And like that's kind of where like the spirituality and science conversation comes in again, because like that correlates with the whole chakra system of the body. So your chakra,
and are you talking chakras like traditional like Hinduism chakras?
Yes, your traditional energy centers of your body, and like it's kind of it's.
Is it Hinduism or is that the Orient? Is that?
It's Hinduism, yeah.
Okay.
And like there's a whole bunch. It's your chi is more
chi,
like
that's
your Orient.
It's
all the same energy,
right? Yeah, and so much. And this is another thing that comes up in this podcast a million times is language, and how so much of the time language is so poor. Like for what we're trying to do with language is convey intent and convey what we're trying to say, but language is just this clunky way of doing it, right? Like there's so many words for different things, right? Like you say, like chakras and chi and all this. Yeah, it's probably the same word, just like God and all these and mysticism and spirituality. It's all
the same.
It's all the same shit. It's just different labels on, right?
Yes.
But I feel like that's so important because when so many people that don't, if you've never had that realization yourself, you hold language on this really high pedestal. I feel like right now is the most important time of this, of people getting so upset over language. But you have to detach yourself from what language is. Language is just it's intent. It's what people's character. There's so much more to it that we're missing the forest for the trees by concentrating so much on the language and not going into it. Sorry. I
love that. But yes, 100%. Because we have so many different words for, like this culture calls it this thing. This culture calls it that thing.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
Same fucking thing. But yeah, so crystals and our energy centers. So like your chakra system, each energy center is related with a major organ. And that's it's not really talked about, and which I find kind of funny because we all talk about the chakra systems and energy centers. And it's like your energy center is an energy center because your heart is moving. It's creating a lot of energy. That's why there's an energy center there, right? Your pancreas is constantly working. That's why there's an energy center there. So when you have these crystals, now it's not just necessarily saying that the crystals themselves, like, yes, the crystal itself will interact with your energetic system, but nerd talk here. You a Star Wars fan?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
My dog's name is Ahsoka.
Okay. The crystal is just a focus point.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
So when we talk about things on an energetic level, and it's kind of funny because I was actually watching this TikTok earlier about Buddy was going off about witches, and he's like, "Are you guys just Jedi and not telling us?" And literally, yes, yes, because like witchcraft is not what people think it is. I'm not out here like worshiping Satan. Satan doesn't want to be worshipped, but we're not. That's the whole thing to buzz past. I'm out here playing with energy. That's all I'm doing. I'm out here playing with energy. I'm out here playing with intention. That's it.
So then I am very curious about that because I feel like just the term. And again, I'm glad we talked about that language thing because I feel like so many people have such a reaction to that word of just witchcraft, witchcraft.
Oh, you're a witch,
right? It brings up such of these deep feelings from whatever it is, for whatever reason that is. It almost doesn't matter. But I feel like because of that always prevents, and I'm guilty of this too. It prevents you from actually understanding what it is because you have so much. As soon as you hear the word, you fill all the blanks in on yourself, so you don't really ever open yourself up to ask those questions.
Just pre-programming, right? And like, I can't be mad at it.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't be mad at it when I tell people I'm a witch, and they're just like, "Oh my god!"
They clutch their pearls.
I can't be mad at that.
Yeah,
like,
but I think to different type of people, it brings up different things because to me, it's just intense curiosity. Like, oh, I want to know. Like what all goes into that. So then, I think this is also what I love about podcasts because now we've talked for almost an hour and people are going to hear who we are a little bit and where we come from. And now they have so much more open that I feel like now they're going to be open to listening to what that is. And that's what's so special about it because I feel like in society where it's so quick and it's 5-minute clips here and 2-minute clips here and you see someone for 5 minutes and then you're on your phone, you never really give that space. And I'm curious to you, what does witchcraft mean to you? Like what does that encompass? What all goes into that? Because I am so far out of my comfort zone with that one. I can't even begin to tell you.
There's so many different aspects of like witchcraft in itself. You can be a practicing Wiccan, which is basically like
Heard of that.
the religious portion. Like it's an actual, like they have a Bible and like they're full setup. I'm not practicing. I'm not practicing Wiccan. I call myself I'm a Grey Witch, so I do a little bit of everything. I do a little bit of kitchen witchery, so I play with my food and put intention into my cooking. I play with herbs. I make little potion bottles. I do tarot, candle magic.
Can you take me through each one of those things and explain those? Because I would. So let's just start. What was the first one you said? Kitchen something?
Kitchen witch.
Kitchen witch.
Kitchen witch.
So can you take me through that?
A kitchen witch would be she would be, I can't say she, they would be somebody that puts a little bit of magic into the home, puts a little bit of extra love and kindness into the cleaning, sweeps out any negative energy from the home, fills it with that. You know, like you go into houses and you're just like, fuck, this is such a nice, cozy place. That's that kind of energy that a kitchen witch gives off. Black witch would be more dealing with like the darker kind of side of the arts.
Have you looked into that stuff?
That's not my department.
No, you don't go into
That's not my department.
Have you looked into it just to see what it's about?
I've looked into it, and like curiosity might kill the cat one day, but yeah, like,
not today.
Not today. That's not my department. I'll leave that one to the professionals.
Yeah. So then you said potions.
Yeah. So and like potions, like people like I make like little like potion bottles and like
because I feel like that's one of the things Tori said. Like if I'm feeling bad, I get a potion made up. I'm like, okay, now I really got to talk to this lady.
Tori's got a lemon in her freezer, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, and like there's so many different aspects that I've taken from a lot of different like traditions. So like I can't say that I'm traditionally like a pagan witch. I can't say I'm traditionally a this or traditionally a that. I've just like I'm a conglomeration of what works best for me. Where were we going with this?
I don't know. Okay, there was kitchen witch. It was potions. It was
potions. We were talking about potions. Yeah. So like my potions that I make, I'll just do like little jars, little bottles, and now every herb that I work with has a different characteristic, whether it brings love or protection or cleansing or whatever.
And when you're talking herbs, like what can you give a rundown? Like what are the staples of that? Like what would you never leave the house without?
Like weed.
There you go. That's a good one. Hey,
that's a good herb.
That's the best herb out there.
But honestly, though, weed.
I might be a witch too.
Rosemary. I use a ton of rosemary. Basil. Yarrow is a really good one. So like yarrow grows all over here. It's like it grows tall stalks and it's got like the puffy white flowers on the top of it. It's good for fever. Oh, great for fever.
Really?
Yes.
And so now how do you know that? Like that's where I'm so curious of like how did you build this knowledge base?
It's just been my life, man.
It's like the internet, do you think?
No, it's literally just been my life. Like my grandparents are hippies.
Oh, that's where it is.
My grandparents are hippies and they they subdivided the property now, but they had 40 acres of property in the Blayberry in Golden, BC. Right in the mountains, tucked away, way in the back 40. And we just tromp through. My grandma would be like, oh, this is that. This is this. You can use that. You can eat this. And like, I just kind of grew a love from that. And then just from loving the outdoors and loving plants, I just kind of spend my summers learning about things.
Cool.
Like, every year gets a little bit better.
That is awesome.
I'm actually running my first workshop this summer.
Really?
Yeah.
So the people can come like take in a little bit of that knowledge.
Yeah.
That
so
you've built up?
full day of exploring and learning about the plants on our land and how to use them.
Cool.
How to be respectful with it.
Wow.
Because I think that's a really big thing that like people kind of miss with like foraging education is how important it is to be like diligent with your foraging. Like you can't just take everything.
Yeah.
And you got to leave something. You have to leave something behind.
Yeah. Which is very much a huge part of Native American ethos too, is that, and so many of these things, so much of that knowledge. And that's what's one of the most sad things about, that whole, I don't even know what to condense that all into for one word, an easy thing, but just how sad that is, the lack of, or the loss of knowledge.
Yes.
In everything you're saying, we had just so much knowledge. When you talk about earlier, what we're talking about, of how people came up with these things and learned all these lessons, and what went into that is thousands of years of trial and error and finding things, and it needs to work, right? When a fever back then versus a fever now is a million degrees of separation, right? They needed it to work, and there's knowledge that is we're losing, right?
Like I said, like it's not alternative. There's nothing alternative about it. It is what we've been practicing for thousands of years.
All medicine is alternative. It's alternative to other medicines, right? Like,
yeah. So it's just like
you just have better PR,
right? Just have better PR. Yeah. The flowers don't have good PR.
No, they don't. But that's why you need people like you to come on and educate people like me that are, maybe not as I'm open to it, more open than I was, and trying to get more open to it. But I feel like it's conversations like this with somebody to see, because I feel like it's one of those things where it's so easy to write off, right?
Yeah.
The people are easy to write off. I feel like, like you hear this one, oh, that's just that crazy person, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to be that write off. Yeah, and like, that's kind of like, I don't want to say it's why I wear so many hats, but it's like a big portion of me wearing so many hats is I don't want people to be like, oh, like you're a witch. I'm just going to completely write anything you have. It's just completely write off. Like, it's just, you're full of woo stuff. You're a hippie or whatever. And it's like,
I feel that deep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like, no, like
exactly
there's
what you mean.
Like, you can be a spiritual hippie and you can be a dirty redneck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you're speaking right to my heart right now.
I'm a hip neck.
Because I feel like with this podcast, that was one of those things is I'm very intellectual and I it sounds icky to say, but I'm very intelligent and I like to think of things and I like, philosophy and all these things. But also I'm a fucking caveman at the end of it. Like I'm a goofball. I'm a joke, but I want to be able to bring those parts out. But I feel like I almost pigeonholed myself. When I first started the podcast, I had just, intellectual conversation after intellectual and was kind of keeping it up here. But I'm not always living. I like this stuff and I enjoy this stuff, but also I like living down here too.
Yeah.
And I love the fart jokes and the dick jokes and all that shit. Like,
yes,
I am that person too, but I felt like I tried so hard at the start to prove to people like I'm worth listening to. Like I have things to say, and I was so worried about bringing my more silly side out because I didn't want that to I didn't want to get written off. Somebody hears a podcast with me and maybe a couple of my buddies, crushing a couple beers, maybe smoke a bit of weed or whatever it was, and then they, this idiot, right? Like I can write him off. Now I don't have to listen to it. And then when I have on, somebody from the Alzheimer's Society of GP, and we have an amazing conversation about, what it is to go to have a family member with Alzheimer's and the support systems and all that. I want them to be able to take that seriously. And I think, what gives me hope is you see people like Joe Rogan who can have his comedians on, they can do mushrooms and do a 5-hour podcast with Post Malone. That's, beautiful and amazing.
Yeah.
And then he can also have, Neil deGrasse Tyson on and talk about physics and stuff. Like I want to be that too. And it's so nice to be able to say like, there is a path forward. Like obviously if it was easy to become Joe Rogan, everybody would do it, but at least it is possible. There's people out there that can do both, that can wear both hats. And to hear you talk about that of, trying to do other things to make sure that you're valued,
wear as many hats as you want, man. Yeah. There's no limit to that. And like, once I figured that out, it was like, fuck, I can do so much shit.
Yeah.
I can do so much shit because
you just watch me.
I have so many different personalities. Like I am definitely like, there's the crude redneck in me. Like, oh my gosh, I'm like, who birthed this child when I'm at work? Like I'm something else.
Yeah.
And then there's the softer side of me that comes out with when I'm around girlfriends. And then there's, the hippie side of me that comes out when I'm tripping on acid in the fucking forest. Right. Like there's just so many different parts of me that like, I don't want people to think spirituality has to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think it really bothers me. It really bothers me when people think, oh, you're spiritual. Like, oh, you're the girl wearing the fucking long dress with all the jewelry and the rings and this and that. And, you smell like incense.
Yeah. Same here.
Like, yes, I do smell like incense. And yes, I do wear a lot of jewelry, but also, right? Like I want there to be that, but also, like you don't have to fit in this fucking box to be this certain thing. Like you can be spiritual. You can believe in the power of rocks and the power of herbs and, be a welder. You can be a CEO of a company. Yeah. You don't have to be a fucking, couch potato in your mom's basement with tapestries on your wall to have that. Spiritual, like spirituality is for everybody.
And you can look like anything, right? Like I feel that as well. Like I'm one of the most hippie people around. Like I feel like I kept it very much under wraps because that was where I grew up in Slave Lake. And as a guy, in the dressing room playing hockey and stuff, you're not bringing up like, that I think love is the biggest thing in the world and that it's going to say, and that's what we all need to work towards, and compassion for others, right? Like
you get shit kicked, man.
Exactly. So you don't bring it up and you keep that part hidden. But I think when I started this podcast and started to talk like that and really bring my true self, that I honestly believe this stuff, and I'm way more hippie than anybody ever would have thought until I started this. I think that opened a lot of people's eyes to that side of me.
Yeah.
But I had always kind of keep that hidden. But when you look at me, you would never guess that, right? Like you'd probably guess redneck, meathead, or like, I don't know what, caveman. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Right. But that's, judging a book by its cover, right? Like exactly. I am that. But I am those things too. Tomorrow night, if you got to see me at 8:00 watching the UFC, you will see me like a madman running around my house like a caveman, screaming and yelling because I'm that much into it. And I am that caveman too. Yeah. But then I'm also that loving, caring hippie that wants everybody to love each other and to solve all these problems and bring people together, right? Those two things can exist at the same time. They don't have to be.
They don't have to be separate.
Yeah.
They don't have to be separate. Just like spirituality and science.
Exactly. Right? Spirituality and science.
Same thing.
Not only do they not have to be separate, oftentimes they're one and the same.
They're one and the same. It all correlates. It all interweaves with itself. Yeah. And it's like I said, like you just have to put two and two together. Yeah. It's like, holy fuck. Okay. Like we actually did learn about this stuff. We just weren't smart enough at the time to like figure it out.
And what always bugged me was it seemed like there's this idea that because some of the woo-woo stuff is antithetical to science, I know it's not, but that was the mindset. It gave this free reign for people to not look into it and just to write it off. Like myself, I was that person.
Yeah, because they write it off as woo-woo stuff.
But
right?
But now
I just call it life stuff.
Yeah, exactly. but now you see these people like I'm trying to think of an example. You see these physicists and these mathematicians and these scientists that are at the absolute peaks of intellectual thinking, and they are leaving the space open to mystery and talking about the boundaries of science and mystery and where they intersect. And what I think is so powerful about that is now, if these people with a fucking 200 IQ are not writing this stuff off, what are you, Joe Schmo, that fucking thinks you're better than people because you're writing it off and you think that you're on the right side? Like, who are you to write that off when these people are showing, like, I think that day is over, and I think we haven't caught up to that, but I think that was an easy excuse for a long time, and now people are losing that because it's starting to bubble up from the underground that, hey, this stuff is legit, and that this stuff has, it might not all be legit, but there's a lot more to it than you think. It's not as easily written off as we thought it was for a long time.
And I also too think it's important to remember that like there's a lot of stuff that is like scientifically taught, but isn't actually proven.
Oh, for sure.
Right? It's just like the one that really gets me, that like just reels over in my mind constantly, is the Earth. Like how our Earth is structured. We have the crust. We have all these different layers. We taught that in school, right? How many little pictures you look at? The Earth is split up like this. They don't even know that.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. Well, that is based on a hypothesis. Hypothesis. It's like, this is this thing and this is that thing. So it has to be this thing over here.
Which is, it goes so much further than that though. Like, you're right. And that is a good example. But that example is all the way through with everything, right? The immune system. We think we know how the immune system, we have no idea how it works, right? We're guessing. We have all these pictures of this is the protein stuff. We are guessing.
It's all a big guess.
Exactly.
It's all a big guess. And we're teaching it as truth.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
Exactly. It does. And it drives me nuts too. But you want to take it back, because this all seems like the same symptom of the same thing, the same fallacy of our own ignorance about our wisdom, right? Like we need to be more aware of what we don't know and to keep that at the forefront of our mind instead of blazing forward with this. And again, I think it's a piece of human dynamic, a piece of the human spirit to believe we know more than we do, right? That is always what's got us through, because if you got caught in just trying to make sure we don't act until we know for sure, we would never get to this place. You have to act, right? Action comes first. And like I said, the reasons we can ask these questions, why now, is because we have a really comfortable life and we're not worried about making sure we just survive till tomorrow. We have the comfortability of knowing we're going to be alive nobody has that, sorry, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Right? That allows us to ask these questions. But if you want to back it all the way up, just physics itself is all based on, like, When Einstein came up with general relativity and we came up with, string theory and all these things, they're all based off of an untruth. We had to add a little bit. It didn't work, and we had to add this one thing that we didn't know.
Yeah,
and now it all makes sense.
They're based on like if-then statements.
Yeah, exactly. But everything is. And that doesn't discredit all this stuff because
no.
So they plug in this one thing like that isn't there, but that makes everything work. And now we had all these amazing, amazing scientific revolutions with this, because it seems once you plug this thing in, but at the end of the day, we plugged something in. We don't actually know. It really gave us it was an amazing tool to get us where we are. But at the end of the day, we are based off of a guess, right? Like the entirety of physics and our understanding of the universe and everything is based off, and I love this. And if you listen to the right Joe Rogan episode, you'll hear an actual intellectual or Lex Friedman would be even better than this to talk about this. If you listen to Lex Friedman and Eric Weinstein, they do an amazing podcast on this exact thing and how we are so out of touch with what we know and where that all began. And actually, Eric is put his own theory of everything forward, where he's putting forward a new theory of everything that solves it all, but it's all based on geometrics and stuff. And I've tried to read it. I bought this book called The Theory. What's it called? I'll look it upstairs. Actually, no, I have a picture of it on my phone. I'll look it up when you're talking, so I don't stop the whole podcast. But it's this book by Roger Penrose, Sir Roger Penrose. Sorry, he's been knighted. I don't want to miss his sir. And he's one of the smartest mathematicians in the world. And it's this book. It's about this thick, and it goes through the history of math from way back with like Plato and stuff, all the way through to like current day, and all these amazing mathematicians that added to it, and the complete flips of our understanding of life itself.
Yeah. And I
got probably 2/3 of the way through, and it's so boring and so awful and so heavy math. Like, and I'm not a math guy. I don't really, I was so enamored with Eric Weinstein and his ideas and what he was proposing of this new theory, but I couldn't read the theory. I couldn't understand it because I don't know the math. So that was my attempt to go back down it. But I just love that there's people out there like Eric, like Stephen Wolfram, like there's a couple other people that are trying to not just take it. You have two options if you want to work within the world. If you're at that level of high understanding that you can understand things, you can take their word for it, Einstein, and take that exception. You can work in the world and try and find tools with it. Or you can say, I'm going to back this all the way back up to before Einstein. I'm going to try and figure out better where we don't need this little effect, and we actually find this out for true. And like, that is such a cool and so bold and so ballsy. Like,
that is so ballsy.
I love it. He put this out like, hey, this is my shot. This is what I think it is. And nobody's coming back at him. Nobody's saying nothing because nobody really understands what he said. It is so far beyond and so out there that nobody's proving it and saying, hey, he's onto this. This is real. Like we believe it. But also nobody's saying, hey, this is bullshit. This doesn't make sense. Nobody's really critiquing it. And it's in this weird space of it's out there and he's put it out there, but nobody really knows what it is, right? Like we could have the answers to everything, into faster than light travel. This could be the answer to leaving the universe. And that's what Eric's hoping it is, right? To get us out of our solar system and out into the world, out into space.
Out into the world, basically. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like in a way, that was a nice Freudian slip there. But I just think that is such an admirable goal, in that he's doing this. I mean, he's a famous guy and people know him like I do. And he's one of my heroes, but the fact that he's not a household name and that's what he's out there, like, we know Jeff Bezos, right? Like, cause he's done all the stuff and he's built this empire and all that stuff. And he's, a household name to everybody.
I can't roll my eyes any harder.
Right. Exactly. I saw that was a good hard eye roll. I really enjoyed it. But the fact that we don't know, nobody knows Eric Weinstein's name, but what he's after, he hasn't been as successful with it in all fairness, but I have so much more admiration for somebody that's chasing that. That is his goal. That's what 100%. He's trying to do versus like that. Like, I feel like as a society, what we need to do is change our incentive structures of what we value. Because right now it's all the dollar.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's all the dollar. Yes. And that sucks.
We need to value this.
Community. Community, pulling people together. That's what it is. And that's what people, like Lex Friedman and like Joe Rogan are trying to say throughout. They have all these random people on, the conversations go all over, but the through point that runs through it all is that message of love and compassion, helping everyone around you and trying to help, right? Like, and that's something that I admired so much. That's something I brought in, right? Like, I talk about love and compassion on this almost every podcast. I bring that up and why. And like, I have a lot of issues with politics today and the attacks from right to left and all that stuff. And that at every point I'm trying to show, like, there's ways to attack the ideas with love and compassion for the people, right? Just like we were talking about earlier with these systems and these huge conglomerates, that it's not bad people, it's bad systems, and allows the darker sides of their nature to come out.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what fits that system, right? That's what it is. And it draws that out. That's not those people's fault, right? I would say there's a certain level of responsibility you have to recognize that, right? Like, I don't give Jeff Bezos a pass for all the stuff they did, even though that's naturally, what, if you want to create that Amazon, you have to make those calls and you have to treat people like that. I still don't give you a full pass on that. You know better. You know what you're doing.
Better.
Yeah, like, at the end of the day, you're a big boy. You wouldn't be able to get to that place if you weren't. So I don't give you a free pass on that, just because that is, the natural way that this capitalistic system has been set up and could probably be tweaked to be better.
It's unfortunate. But
it's unfortunate. But I feel like so many people are so quick to blame. And I guess that is probably another piece of human nature that makes us that way, right? So you have to have forgiveness for that too. But it's so easy just to jump to the blame so quickly without just trying first to have compassion for where that person got to. That person was a baby at one point. Yeah. And they had a lot of inputs and a lot of things that went into them to get them to that point where they don't recognize the negative aspects, right? Like it's so hard to walk through life always having compassion, always leading with compassion for everyone. But the payback of living that way is so special. It's
so special, right? Honestly, having that compassion for people, especially like when they are, on the sandpaper side of things. You know what I mean? And
got a little rough finish,
Yeah, and it's just like, you know what? Like, I'm going to give you the fucking time of day. I'm going to see it from your side. Yeah. Whatever. Like,
I'm going to treat everybody like a human that deserves that
the golden rule is a golden rule for a reason, right? Like, treat everybody as how you want to be treated. And I live my life by that. I live my life by treating others the way that I wanted to be treated. And it honestly, it fucking kills me because people are horrible. Yeah. People are horrible. And that's, I don't know how else to say it. So I don't get treated very nice very often, but I just keep giving. And I really fucking hope that one day it comes around.
Yeah. And I would throw one caveat at that. I don't think people are horrible. I think life is horrible. I think people are not horrible or good. I think life is horrible and really tough, and life is suffering. And because of that, it is so hard to get a roll of the dice.
That's really
true. That you get
to
that point where you're having that interaction with that person where they are that mean because hurt people, right?
That's really true. People are just doing what they need to do to get by.
Exactly. And that's the unfortunate reality of life is fucking hard.
Dude.
Even if you have an amazing life, it's still hard. And the way we're evolutionary based, everything is whatever. If a 10 to you, right? A 10 to you might be getting taken away from your parents at age 4 and forced to fight in a war in Sierra Leone, right? Like in Africa. And that might be a 10 for you and the most fucked up shit you saw and the atrocities you see. Or you might, go through it. Your parents might get a divorce when you're 8 years old, and that is a 10 to you, right? But it's still a 10 on that knob. It's the most crazy shit you've ever experienced, and the way it harms you, and the way we're designed to grow in response to hardship, right? Which is evolutionary based. It's based on that. And you have to have that compassion for whatever set of conditions. Like, there's always going to be hard shit in life. Life is hard.
Life is fucking.
And it doesn't matter if it's, a divorce hard or a child soldier hard, because it's going to affect you the same way. Yeah. And once you understand that, you can have so much more compassion for people of who they are. And it's really tough. And it's funny to hear you talk about, because I also try and live that way of treating everybody the way you want to be treated. And I give everyone so much respect until you cross me. And then I switch I flip like a switch, and I'm a snap show, right? Like, it's funny because I'm the most polite. Like, when I go to Starbucks or whatever, I'm going to be over the top, like super polite, asking about your day and all that stuff. And if someone's rude to me, it's fuck you, right? Like I know I know that's not healthy, but that's just who I am. And I feel like it's one of these things where I feel like if you're going to walk around giving this out to people, if you don't get it back. Anyway, where was I going with that? I had a point. Oh, so you try and live that way, and then you get into a structure. So this is how I feel. I want to treat everyone like you want to be treated, but then I have a job where I have employees, and in a structure, a corporate structure, if you want to treat everybody like you'd want to be treated, you're going to go bankrupt.
You're going to go bankrupt, and you're going to get walked on.
Yeah. And so that is my true morals. That's how I want to treat everybody. But now I'm forced into a position where I can't live my life that way. And I have to compromise myself every day going into it. And it kills me. It tears my soul apart.
If you were the employee, how would you want your boss to treat you?
Right. And exactly. And that's the new framework you have to put it through is, how can I still still make sure that the company is successful and I can't make a bad decision for the company, but within that framework, still give everything I can to make sure everybody's happy. And I tell them that all the time. I say, you know what, if we make more money, I don't make more money here, right? Like I'm not paid off of the success or not the success. I want you to be happy. What dictates to me, you know, successful or not successful, is that I get to come to work and I get to see everyone smiling and I get to see everyone having a good time. And I tell them that a lot because like, and it's true. Like I honestly think that I could not care less, you know, like I have a lot, my ego is fucking enormous, always has been. So I have a lot of ego and I want to be successful and I want to, but not at the sacrifice of them and their happiness, right? Because if they're not happy and they come in, then I'm not happy. And then I hate going to work. When I
just want the whole crew to be happy.
When there's drama in the office or drama in the shop or drama with the drivers, it's the worst.
It's the worst. It is the worst. Right? Guy drama is the worst.
Oh, I've seen guy drama, girl drama, just drama itself.
Guy drama, I don't know, like oil patch. Maybe it's just welder drama, but like.
Well, I don't know if you'll be able to speak to this, but I think this is probably pretty universal. Is going through high school, I tried as much as I can to stay out of drama because I just felt like I was always an old soul and I always just felt like I'm too old for this shit. Even when I was like 14, I'm like, I'm too old for this shit. Fuck you guys. Like Seriously? This is silly. Yeah. This is childish, right? Like,
same.
You know, I'll go read my fucking Twilight and Harry Potter. I'll be fine, right? Like I got my Legend of Zelda. I got my Twilight. I'm fully self-sufficient here. I don't need this. But I thought, oh, but this is high school. Once you're out of it, that goes away. And then I'll go to university and say, oh man, this drama stuff's there. Like, fuck, you guys didn't leave that in high school. Like, come on, I was already sick of it there. And then, okay, well, now I've graduated university. I'm going out in the real world. This drama shit's gone. And then you go in the real world. Holy shit, it's almost worse than high school. Like, when does this shit end?
It doesn't.
I know.
It doesn't fucking end, dude. And like, it was so funny because like I lifeguarded for 7 years.
Oh yeah.
And like lifeguard drama is like it's like a whole other world. Like lifeguarding world is this whole other thing, right? So like I got out of lifeguarding and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go join the oil field, right? Guys, no drama. It's gonna be good. No drama, free. It's gonna be free sailing. And I got out into the oil field and I was like, holy fuck, you guys are more dramatic.
Guys have some big egos, hey?
Oh my god.
And we are very insecure.
Yes.
Very insecure.
Very insecure.
Oh man.
Holy fuck. And like I try really hard to like, you know, make everybody feel great about themselves, but holy, it's like
it's tough, eh? Like, tough. And I'm not sure if guys have more insecurity than women, or if just guys have to be so sheltered off from ever exposing it that we have so many defense mechanisms built up from preventing us from ever showing that insecurity.
That's what it is.
And it comes out in snaps, and it comes out in that where
that's what it is.
I think women probably have the same insecurities, and obviously they do, and they have all these other pressures that guys don't even have to think about.
We think about it, and then we talk about it. So like behind closed doors with like our partners or our best friends or whatever, we'll talk about the same situation over and over and over and over and over until it's like somehow fucking magically settled in our heads because we talked about it 50 times.
Yeah.
Guys, however, freak out, end of story, water under the bridge.
And if ever somebody was to call you out on a deep insecurity articulately in a way, you are probably not going to take it well, right? Like, and I know this from experience because anytime anybody did really call me out on my shit, like, and it really hit home, it goes there, you don't know how to react because you've never had it happen, right? You've never been caught up in that moment, and that's scary. And
I'm still learning how to get yelled at.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, and it's kind of a weird thing to say because, like, you know, like I'm still an apprentice, so I'm still learning, and I still do get snapped at. Yeah. And like I'm a soft human being. I'm a crier.
Yeah.
I'm a crier.
Me too.
You raise your voice at me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I'm learning still how to be yelled at, and I'm learning that when people yell at me, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. It is a lack of communication because they had a plan in their heads. Yeah. That wasn't communicated with me, and the plan didn't go according to plan. I'm sorry, that's not my fuck up. You didn't communicate your plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm sorry. Or it's I just have too much shit on my brain and things have racked up and now it's boom.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Yell, get it out, say all the things you need to say. Okay, it's done. Let's have a conversation now, like fucking adults.
Exactly. And that's, you know, with our work, we don't ever yell. I say that it happened, but we hold it. If ever it gets to the point of yelling, somebody's got to go for a walk, and that's a rule we have throughout our company, right? Nobody ever yells it. We speak to each other. We want us to be taught to, right? The owner of the company, who's also my dad, you know, like we have a rule. You know, if you wouldn't talk to Ingo like that, you don't talk to anybody in this company like that, because that's how we talk to each other, right? And if that happens, and if ever that comes to me, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like 2 drivers just got in a yelling match, and they're at the go talk. Hey, why were you guys yelling? Why didn't somebody not go for a walk? do we yell here? Is that how we do it? Do we accomplish anything by yelling? No, we don't. We calm down and then we have a discussion. If we can't have a discussion, it can't happen, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that, there doesn't need to be a place for any, and nobody should ever get yelled at, right?
No,
Because it
you don't
doesn't
need
ever
to yell.
accomplish that, right?
It's just communication,
but it's
man.
different things in different areas. And, you talk about, welding has a little bit of that sandpaper, right? Just the industry itself and what goes on in it. It's, you can't have that same rule. It'd be hard to enforce something about, how we can't enforce the same ways we talk to each other like we do in our company than you could in other areas, right? But to know that it is doable to operate an operation without people yelling at it. Now it takes away that excuse where you shouldn't have to put up with that, right? Like It's great. I think that's a good skill to learn of how to manifest that, because in life you're going to get yelled at, right? It might not be at work, but there's probably going to be a time where you get yelled at. And that is a skill to learn how to. You
have to learn how to be yelled at and be okay with it. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people get yelled at and then they hold it.
Right.
They just hold it
until they can yell at somebody
else. And
else.
they think about it and they think about it and they think about it and they think about it. And another situation. Now I can yell at somebody else.
Exactly. And it might be their dog. It might be their wife. It might be something, but it never works out good, right? And you never know how to deal with it. And to say that, it doesn't just need to be crying too. It's learning how to get, because when somebody yells at me, my immediate instinct is full on volcano anger.
Oh
right?
Yeah. I snap back and I can't form a straight thought process. And I'm literally just screaming. I'm just like screaming swear words and fuck yous and grow the fuck ups and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but then you have to, and then you look back on it and you go, did that serve me?
No.
Right? Like, did that serve me? Did that serve me to let myself get to that point?
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Learning is about to not give into those. And I find that meditation helps. You got to pee? Me too. Okay, you use that. I'll use that one. We'll pause it.
Okay.
We've already been going for an hour. All right. I don't remember what we're talking about. Doesn't matter. I think a conversation like this, you just let it go where it goes.
Yeah.
So I do want to get back into closing off the witch talk, because then after that, no. This is what I want to ask about. So the apothecary stuff.
Yes.
That's what I want to know about. And I want to know about, if people are interested in that, how do they find it and how do they get into it? And
what I actually do, what actually happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I have like a shop portion, which is, it has a small amount on there. More of it, like I make myself like a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I make salves, lotions, oils, all kinds of different teas. I only have a couple things on my shop right now. I only have a couple different kinds of teas and a couple candles. But
do people ever ask you for like custom, like?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like if you want a custom blend for like a sleepy time tea or a wake me up tea or a fucking I have a headache tea or I have a fever tea, whatever. Like hit me up.
My girlfriend just broke up with me tea.
Yes. Yeah. I will make you a blend. I got you. Like don't worry.
Yeah.
Like so there's that. And then I also do rituals and ceremonies. So that's diving into the more medicinal side of marijuana and using it in a ritualistic portion. Also incorporating tobacco use in with that. Yeah. And there is
where did you learn that?
That's just been like self-taught over the years.
How often do you do that? I would love to try that.
I ritually smoke like probably once a week. I have a little ritual, and like I do different kinds of rituals all the time, like whether it be like a full moon ritual or I had a really, really good one here at the beginning of the year was letting go of past self. And I gathered a bunch of things that kind of defined who I was.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had an old earring that I used to wear like big wood earrings. And it was kind of an aesthetic for me because like I was like trying to give off like I'm that hippie girl, right? And it was like that portion of me, like the kid, this is gone, a string from my journal book, a scratch card. It was just a whole bunch of like little random things that kind of made up. Okay, throw it into the fire. That's gone. I'm moving on with my life. I am like, thank you to me, the past me, for bringing me to where I am now. So
and having love for that,
and I do cacao ceremonies, like hot cocoa. And then eventually in the future, I have plans on expanding into more psychedelics.
Cool.
Mushrooms.
Yeah. I'm very interested in all that.
I'm in connection with a fellow medicine woman down in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Who does phenomenal fucking work. Like, I'm just in awe of what she does.
It's amazing what's going down in Mexico.
She's worked with people like big time people.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to name drop or anything, but like big time people. And so there's plans in the future to hopefully kind of get her medicine up here.
Yeah.
And then my medicine down there, because obviously what I have on the land is a lot different than what she has down
For
on
sure.
the land. So
For sure it would be.
Kind of.
How did you meet her?
I met her through a girlfriend, Kirsten, and it's actually her cousin.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
cool how life works like that. Hey,
it was so weird. Yeah, Kirsten was like, I have to get you in connection with my cousin. Like, I think you guys will have like a really great, connection, whatever else. And we just start talking, and it was like, holy fuck, like you're great. And we called up, whatever. It was awesome. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, there's that portion. I do one-on-one work with like life coaching and stuff.
Cool. And how does everybody find it? Like, is it just word of mouth of like somebody will tell another person, or maybe somebody's going through something, they'll say like, hey, maybe check out Isla and see what she can do for you, kind of thing?
Yeah, basically.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that really cool.
Word of mouth. And like my vision is to be like that medicine woman in the town.
Yeah.
The woman that people come to when they're, I don't want to turn to pills. I want an alternative. What is it? And like, yes, we have loads of natural health practitioners, holistic health practitioners in town, but I don't think we have anybody that really focuses on like healing as far as like mental healing goes and physical healing and how it all just like spiritual healing, how it all kind of goes together. Like this is how to live a healthier life.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things I see, regardless of your tools or methods, right? Whether you're Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern, like whatever your medicine is, what I see the biggest issue is getting locked into your ideas and not being open, because I feel like what the biggest problem I see in medicine right now is just the lack of relationship between the people, right? Like you talk to somebody for like the last time I went to the doctor, right? You talk for 5 minutes, they think you have you all figured out, and then they give you a suggestion and you go out the door, right? Like
I've had nothing but horrible experiences with Western medicine. And like, it's not to say like I'm not against it by no means. Like it has its time and its place. But like me personally, I have had nothing but bad experiences. I've been turned down care. I've been prescribed wrong prescriptions. I've been prescribed prescriptions that don't exist anymore. I've been, misdiagnosed.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of positives to it too. But I think even Western, Eastern, all that stuff, the biggest thing to me is the connection with the person, right? Like it doesn't matter even, I would say what's going to have way more of an effect on whether it's successful or not is way less dependent on the type of tools you have at your disposal, right? Whether that's Eastern medicine, whatever, but more so the willingness you are to give the time to the person to connect. And probably 90% of the time, they don't need any drug. They don't need any medicine. They don't need any herbs. They don't need anything like that. They just need someone to fucking talk to you.
Honestly, though.
Right?
Honestly,
and to hear them and to listen to them and maybe give some small suggestions and try and hear where they're coming from and try and see where they're missing, where they're lying to themselves maybe.
And like that like my business kind of came from that, where it was like I'm that person in the friend group that everybody kind of comes to for like, I guess, life advice.
Yeah, for
like,
a download,
whatever. Like, hey, I'm going through shit. Let's have a conversation, like a little fucking weekly therapy session or whatever, right? And it's like, it's not that I don't love my friends and shit. I want to have these conversations with them, and I'm definitely going to continue doing it for free for them. But it's like,
start to get paid for this shit.
Like I'm giving away my knowledge. Like this is worth something. Like,
and you have to value yourself, because if you don't value yourself, you'll get walked on. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's important. So then people get in touch with you. Probably just you have a conversation with them. Like, how does that start? Like, what would it look like if somebody came to you and said, I'm having headaches. I haven't felt the same lately. Like, is that just started? Does that get your mind spinning already on like certain things that might help them? And then from there, you have to have more conversations to maybe really.
Yeah, like if you came to me when you said you were having stomach problems, we start looking at things like, okay, like what's your diet like?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like what is your diet like? Are you getting enough like the proper nutrients that your body needs?
Getting exercise.
Getting the exercise. Like how does your body work? Because like not every person works the same, right? Like my metabolism is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like it's really fast versus somebody else who's not very fast, right? So it's like working with that in itself. It's like, okay, get the nutritional portion down.
Right.
What's your head like?
Yeah.
Where's your headspace at? Because like, okay, like if you're having stomach problems, your stomach's fine, you're eating great. How's your anxiety? Right? Like how's your headspace? Okay, let's have a conversation about that. Okay.
How are your relationships?
How are your relationships? Okay, so now we're going through some things, some mental health things or whatever. Okay, now we can add in this specific herb to help calm your nervous system, or we can add in, you know, this specific ritual or whatever to help connect with yourself throughout the week. And it's like you said, like getting to know that person and getting to know what they need and what works for them. Yeah. Because everybody's so different.
I'm curious. One of the biggest tools that I've been blown away this past year of its effectiveness in all these areas of life is breath work.
Yes.
Have you ever looked into that and got into that yourself?
I breathe every day, man.
I'd hope so. This conversation would have a weird twist.
But no, honestly, like, yeah, breath work is so, like, breath is that's our life force. That's our energy, right? Yeah. Like, and we can control so much of our energy just through breath. Yeah.
Have you ever looked at Wim Hof?
100%. Yeah.
And the studies they did with him at the university, they give him, what did they give him? Oh, they injected him with, what is it? It makes you really sick anyway. And he just did his breath work and completely purged it from his body. Yep. And they said, holy shit, this is amazing. And he did a bunch of other things. He was able to like change his core temperature. He was able to change the temperature in his individual fingers just with breathing techniques and all this. And they said, holy shit, this is amazing, right? But specifically the one where they gave him that toxin and he was able to purge it out of his body. And they said, that's incredible. Like, but maybe this is just something weird with him. So he took, I think, like 20 people and gave them a couple days session on breath work, and they could all do it too. And like, that shit is wild. And that's not nothing. That is studied. That was at a university in the States that they did this. Yeah. Like, that is nuts. And he's climbed Everest with like shorts on and no shoes and shit. Like, all through the power of the breath. Yeah. Like, it's amazing.
Mind-body connection, man. Yeah. It is such a cool thing.
And so many, I mean.
Like, you're having a whack-ass day. It is so amazing what slowing down and just taking 3 breaths will do. Like, 3 of those, man, like you're in a whole new headspace. Yeah. It's like,
and it doesn't, and the funny thing is, it almost doesn't even need to be a certain type of breath. They say it has way more to do with the concentration on the breath of breathing while thinking about breathing. There's some sort of connection about thinking about breathing. And I wonder if this goes back to what we were talking about earlier of the quietness of just, there's so much to do. There's always the phone. There's always this. If it's just taking a couple seconds to focus on your breath, stops all that. It quietens everything. And just having that, even if it's, 15 seconds of that quiet can make a huge impact, right?
Huge impact on your day.
And then you see all these peak athletes now starting to see of just, every champion in the UFC has a breathwork coach, right? Like, every NHL team has breathwork, right? Like it's starting to come in. You're starting to see with just how little we understand what an impact that has in working on it and training yourself to master your breath and to be in control. And so much of what we get out of that. And also just the way we breathe is completely fucked because of our diet and the way we've gone. Like, our jaws are so different, right? Our nasal passages, like, we don't breathe like we're supposed to because of all these things, but you can gain that back. Yeah. With,
training, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. And working at it and building up to it and having a little bit of somebody with some knowledge helping you along the path. Yeah. It's cool. There's a great book called Breath by James Nestor that I read about a year ago, and it was amazing. Can't recommend that to anybody. And also, if you're having a bad day and you need something, there's these free videos on YouTube of Wim Hof guiding you through. It's 5-10 minutes of just his patented kind of breath holds, like the out and the ins, and it will make you feel so much different. And it's free. It's on YouTube. Yeah. It's right now. You have a tool. That's everybody listening to this podcast now has a tool in their tool belt. It's up to you to choose to use it if you want it. Yeah. But it's there, right? And that is so nice to know. You could take 10 minutes if you just had the worst day at work and you don't want to bring that home to your kids and your dog and your wife and stuff. You could sit in that garage and do a fucking 10-minute breath work and change your day.
You can actually, no, I don't know if you know this, but now I think for new people, it's about 90 minutes. And I don't know the specific breathwork pattern. Right. But you can get your brain to release DMT.
Yeah. Oh, what is that? It's called fire breathing. Tumo. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yes.
Tumo. Yeah. Exactly. It's amazing. And what is so cool about Tumo breathing specifically is you get to see some of the mimicked effects of, this is going to go down a whole rabbit hole. Anyway, if we're trying to wrap up, this might not go well. Because what we're seeing right now, when you look at the scientific studies of psilocybin and all these things, and the amazing efficacy they have with PTSD and depression and all these things, and it's after, you can stay on SSRIs for 20 years or do 2 doses of mushrooms in a setting with therapy and have the exact same results, which is amazing. But what it speaks to, or that could be ketamine, or that could be all these things that are having these amazing results. MDMA is just mind-blowingly effective, but it's experiential. It's not right. Like an SSRI is always staying in your brain and it's changing the chemical composition always and always updating it. Whereas you might take a chemical like MDMA that puts you into a state that allows you to go into some of those boxes and deal with some of those traumas and deal with it. And it's an experience that you go through, right?
Like essentially it rewires your brain.
It rewires your brain.
And like psychedelics, especially they rewire your brain. Like
and it's so unfortunate that has that stigma because it's so effective.
It's so effective. Like if you look at the brain, like operating regularly, like, okay, you got like a few little connections going on. Yeah. If you look at the brain on mushrooms, like it fucking fires. So you got connections that don't normally happening. Like you're actually rewiring your brain. And like, I find it funny because like people that smoke weed, people that do mushrooms, we're usually like a lot more open-minded, because loving.
Remember at the start of the podcast, we were talking about how important and the benefits you get of asking yourself those tough questions and that.
It's because we do the work. We ask the questions.
Right. But then when you talk about, psychedelics or even weed, it's for whatever reason, I don't know what the science is behind this, but for whatever reason, it naturally brings those things out. It makes those things bubble up to the top and it makes you deal with them. And some people don't like that. Some people say, I hate weed. I get scared, all this stuff. Yeah, it probably brings up some stuff you don't want to deal with, right?
Yeah, that's the medicinal portion of it.
Exactly.
And that's kind of where like my whole like ritualistic smoking comes in, because it's like marijuana is a psychedelic drug. Yeah. It does bring up stuff. Yeah. It opens you up. It fucking rewires you every single time you smoke. Right. You just got to allow it that opportunity. Right. Yeah. And I think it, like anything in life, intention is everything. Right. I can go and I can fucking smoke a joint with a full intention of getting fucking blazed. Yeah. And I will get fully fucking blazed. Or I can smoke a joint with the full intention of
doing some work on yourself,
journaling,
for
fucking opening up.
For sure.
And holy shit.
Processing your day, or there's so many things you can use if you choose to use it that way.
Intention is everything.
Intention is everything, for sure.
It's like the difference between like smoking like medicinally versus recreationally. Like I smoke both. Yeah. So how do you differentiate, right? Yeah. That's a very fine line to walk. But it's like, fuck, my brain is so fucking fried right now. I can't think straight. I need to have a hoot. Yeah. Okay, that's medicinal versus, I could just really chill out on the couch.
Yeah, I could watch
some Disney movies. I'm gonna go.
I hear you.
That's the difference, right? It's the intention that you put into it. Yeah, and like it's the same with like going back to like kitchen witchery. I can make a pot of chili and be really fucking angry when I make it. Yeah, and it's not gonna be good. Same ingredients, make it really, really, really happy. Put a lot of love into it. Yeah. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, and you notice that if you go to a restaurant where they don't really give a fuck and it's just coming out there and there's no love in it, versus you go to a mom and pop place that loves this food and is proud of it, and you can taste that.
You can tell it's the intention, right? Like my potion bottles that I make, like it's just a bottle of herbs.
But it's the intention.
It's the intention that I put into it. Like that is all that witchcraft is. Yeah. It's the intention. It's the playing with the energy.
Cool. Fuck, I love that. And just to bring it back to the point I was made with the tumo breathing, I think that's what's so amazing of that is it gets you to a point where you're going through an experience. It's not like a maintenance thing that you do all the time. Like I mean, you can if you want to do tumo, but you got 90 minutes to sit there and breathe harder than you've ever, and like almost take yourself to the point of exhaustion, right? Like where you have to, it's almost like running a marathon, like what you have to take yourself through to do that. But you get there, it takes you through an experience. And I think there's just something to be said but the power of an experience, right? We're so concentrated on the power of these drugs and the actual affect of what it does to your body. But when you can use that in a better way, you've had way better results, right? Like just one session with a therapist in MDMA changes these lives of these soldiers that are coming back from war. Like nothing. We've struggled so mightily to try and find anything that helps these soldiers. Yeah. And now we have it. And it's you don't want to say anything's a silver bullet, but it is a fucking silver bullet, right? But it's not just MDMA. It's MDMA. It's psilocybin. It's ketamine. It's all these things that change you to allow you to go through an experience that will now change you and helps you rewire that brain. And it's amazing. And I feel like so many people there's probably people listening to this right now that are, clutching their pearls thinking about like, drugs? Like
drugs?
But
drugs to heal? Oh my God.
Right? Like, but at the
trust me. Yeah, trust
exactly.
me. Like,
or don't trust me. Don't trust me. Go read the studies. Go look at.
I would say go
maps.
Experience
or
it.
go experience.
Go and experience.
That's
it.
number one. But I think if somebody's not even going to believe us, they're probably not going to experience it themselves.
That's
right?
fair enough.
But go read the studies. Go look at maps. Go look at all these amazing studies that are coming out right now. Psilocybin, ketamine, all these drugs that are changing people's lives.
Yeah.
And it's coming. Like there's going to be in 5 years, there's going to be clinics all over this U.S. with psilocybin treatments, with MDMA treatments. It's going to be huge, right? Because they're already showing. It's funny to watch it happen because there's such a taboo around it that held things back for so long. But now that the dam broke a little bit and these little squirts came through and they got to just test these things and see, and they actually gave them a chance, and they're saying, "Holy fuck, these things work so well."
Work.
That they're saying, you know what? Screw the taboo. We need to ramp this up, and it's going to start to come to market way faster than it was. Taboo be down, which is amazing to see that can happen. But it's sad to think that we could have had this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, right? Like they were doing experiments in the 60s before they did the whatever, that one act that rescheduled everything as Schedule 1, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it's sad to see. But it's almost a duality, and we've talked about this. So many things have this duality of the good, the dark, and the light of it.
Everything in life has duality.
Yeah, exactly,
it's
right?
Polarity, right? You ride that one line, and you're the one side or the other, and you can be anywhere in between.
Yeah, man. Well, fuck, that was beautiful. I might just end it right there because I don't know. I think if I try and do anything else, I'll maybe mess it up. That was awesome. Anything else that people need to know about? How do they find you? Anything else that we missed?
You can find my business page on Instagram. It's alberta.apothecary.
Okay.
My personal page is Gold Leader. The leader has a 3 instead of an E.
Okay. All right.
Like the true nerd that I am.
Perfect. I know I'll do my best to make sure those are in the description for people can click right on them when I put the episode out. And can't thank you enough for coming over. I loved this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I had no idea what to expect. I was coming over and I was like, I'm kind of nervous. And my boyfriend's just like, nervous about what? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to talk about life stuff. I'm like, I haven't talked about life stuff in a while. I might be rusty.
Well, I didn't feel even a speck of rust. It felt like you've been talking about this all day building up to it because that was just so natural. And just the couple talks I had with Tori about this, I had a feeling this is the way it would go, but you never know, right? And I was really excited for it, but I just kind of had the same thing, low expectations, and they all got blown out of the water. That was the conversation I've been dying to have on so many of these subjects, but it's tough to have this conversation with not the right person, right? People are pretty, you bring some of these topics out to people and they kind of give you that look like you
can definitely have the woo-woo conversation with the witch. It's okay.
Perfect. Well, I might have to have you back over here a couple times. I have to do this monthly just to get all my woo-woo out there.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm down for it.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, again, thank you so much. That was so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Like I said in the intro, that was one I was really excited to get released. A little bit different maybe of a topic than, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how different that conversation was, because I think to a lot of people it might sound very different. But I think for those listening closely, or maybe that have listened to a lot of episodes, maybe just certain specific ones, you will hear me talk about almost everything that me and Isla talked about today, in different circumstances, maybe in different language. And it's funny how these things line up like that, where it sounds like this is a whole new topic that we've never broached before. And very clearly some of these things where I'd never even heard of some of these things before I had this conversation. But then also it's amazing how, with that said, using other language and other topics and listening to other teachers speak, you get to pick up on these topics that are almost saying the exact same thing, just with their own language. And that's beautiful to me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I think Isla's going to be one of those people that comes on this podcast many times in the future. I think I'm really excited to see just kind of where things go in her life. And I think I have a lot more to learn from her. And hopefully I can let you guys in on that journey too. And you guys may be able to learn a thing or two as well along the way. And that's what this thing's all about. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode. Hope you really enjoy your day. If you're listening to this right first thing on Monday when it's released, have a great week. If you're listening to this sometime in the future, have a great week as well. Have a great year. Have a great life. Be nice to people. Be kind, especially on the internet, but definitely in person. Remember those. Remember the difference. And enjoy the outdoors. Enjoy the sunshine. Enjoy the family and friends. And get in touch with some people. Say I love you. Say all those things. It's very important. All right. Okay. Well, I will see you guys either on another one this week or possibly on Monday. All right. See you guys.